Welcome to the Visual Cast. Coming at you from California, I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Rem. The Visual Cast is a hybrid podcast where we sit down with some of the best, most interesting, and most exciting visual artists from all over the world. We chat about life, art, visuals, software, hardware, systems, crystals, alien downloads, spirituality, and catalysts. It's essentially a massive nerd out. But the guests also do a set where we dive into their computer and get an up-and-close look at how they make art, how they perform art, or really anything they want to share with us. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. To support us, please like and subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and leave us a review on Spotify. Now, without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Welcome to the Visual Cast. We're in a little bit of a new environment. I'm moving where I moved, so bear with me as I put some stuff on the wall and make it more interesting. Today we have a really very special guest. I know I say that a lot, but this time I really mean it. He's kind of a celebrity. Maybe it's not the right word, but he's a very important figure in the TouchDesigner space and in the generative space in general. A master systems engineer, a master technical artist, and just kind of a legend. Somebody who, me personally, I have learned from immensely, helped me start off my TouchDesigner career. I'm sure many others, probably most people doing TouchDesigner today. And he is gracing us with his presence, and I'm super excited to have him on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Matthew Ragan.
Hi, oh my goodness, thank you for such an incredible introduction. That's like deeply intimidating and humbling to like hear someone else describe you that way. It's
Just
a real
you wait.
pleasure to be here.
That was off the cuff. I have one written down.
Oh my God. All right, I'm ready. I'll buckle my seatbelt.
Okay. Let's get right into it. I like to start off with like a scripted question that kind of introduces you a little bit more written, and then we can kind of get into more of a conversation. So, Matthew Ragan, the absolute granddaddy of TouchDesigner YouTube tutorials. Your ability and passion for teaching and imparting knowledge is utterly inspiring, but your career is duly something to be in awe of. From being an integral part of Obscura Digital, one of the, if not the biggest interactive and immersive companies, to then being an integral part of the MSG Sphere, your prestigious volume of work is absolutely outstanding. From permanent installations all over the world, to in-depth workshops all over, to now founding SudoMagic, an immersive software and design studio, you're truly a powerhouse of focus and passion. You have taught TouchDesigner at a college level for over a decade, and I think it's safe to say that anyone using TouchDesigner today has either heard your name or has learned how to use the software via your courses, including myself. So, to get it all started, what does system design mean to you, and where does it meet you on a spiritual or esoteric level?
Oh, wow. What a great question. Boy, what does system design mean to me? I think the interesting piece, I don't know, like the world's a complicated place, right? And we have like complicated histories. And I think sometimes the most exciting piece about system design to me is thinking about how you build order and consistency out of the chaos that is the installation or event, or live experience space, right? Like those are deeply chaotic environments in a lot of cases. And system design is really an opportunity to think about how you organize and plan for not only the expected pieces that you're going to encounter, but also the unexpected elements that emerge from those spaces. So I think for me, there's in the kind of like esoteric, spiritual, like internal kind of like wrestling. System architecture and system design is really thinking about how you build order and structure in an otherwise chaotic and unordered world, and how you bring that stability and reliability into a space that maybe gives you the opportunity to create instability, right? I feel
Mm.
like that's one of the pieces I learned often from, a past in theater and design is like you build rules and you build structures and you build a lot of like guardrails
Mm.
so that you have permission to find the places where you're going to break a window or you're going to color outside the
I
lines.
love that.
Um, right? Because the structure gives you the opportunity to think about like where do we deviate and how much can we deviate and how hard can we push this idea that we've built before it breaks, and how can we be, how can we course correct after something breaks. I think that's also really interesting and fun. I feel like we spend a lot of time trying to build things that are reliable and consistent
Mm.
and are going to be, you know, bulletproof. But it's also really fun to, once you have that, think about, okay, well, like what can I push on over here? Or what can I like disrupt? And how can we find a way to um, think about the ways that we can be creative inside of these rule sets that we've built? And I think that's really, for me, probably like the most interesting, I don't know, challenging, frustrating, and rewarding parts of building systems is that you start out with a set of rules that you're hopefully going to build within, and then you wrestle against what's working and not working and deciding like, all right, what do we change or what do we leave?
Mm. Very profound. I love that. I think that I too really relate to that. I think it's kind of an integral part of design in general, kind of almost like an organized chaos. You build something stable, then break it, then fix it, then through doing that, you kind of create this chaos, but it's all working together in some beautiful way. And it's very synonymous to like nature and reality, right? Of things smashing into each other, and breaking and exploding, and then becoming something beautiful, like the lovely earth we live on. So I think that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. And like that's kind of how like rules are made, right? Like rules or structure is made by things breaking down or things, becoming chaotic, right? It's like a kind of very beautiful way that things work. So I really appreciate that. And there's this like I love that in visuals. Like in my visuals, I always try to have this kind of organized chaos. I actually I don't know who coined that term. The first time I heard it was from a DJ called Aja, who was like very high BPM psytrance artist, but he's like it's like very high BPM. It's very fast music, but you can very much enjoy it and kind of like listen to it almost vocationally. It's like very just chill in a way. And he once told me that term, and I kind of always try to infuse that into my visuals of like lots of things are happening, lots of crazy things are happening, but there's something that's drawing it in. Maybe it's the motion of the craziness, maybe it's the color, maybe it's the texture. It could be so many things, right? But it's kind of like this craziness while there's something that's pulling you in and focusing you. And now that I get more into system design, I kind of feel that a lot when I'm rapidly making something, that it's like you almost sometimes lose what it is that you're doing, and then something doesn't work, and then when you go to fix it by doing that, you're like, light switch, okay, that was the thing that I was doing, and then like create some sort of system.
Oh yeah,
I just love that.
100%. I feel like a lot of times we often start with, we give ourselves permission, usually like have a sandbox, and like in the sandbox, it's like there are no rules. You're allowed to like do all the things that you know are never going to work for the thing that you've got to build that's got to run on 6 machines or whatever. And that gives you the space to kind of like make a real mess and then think about like, okay, like as we start to piece together these like 6 ideas, what are the like common threads that unite them? And how do we start to think about like, these ideas really kind of cluster together into this kind of structure, and this like there's another superstructure over here, and then we can start to build like our fundamental building blocks that start to come together and define like, oh, okay, this is how we're actually going to build this thing, and how
Mm.
we're going to like think about building something that's sustainable. But I think you absolutely have to have that space to play, explore, and
Definitely.
be messy, right? Because you're never going to sit down and do it perfectly the first
No.
time. Like,
Well, I
if
mean,
only that was
you
the way it
might
worked.
you might not need it, but you need it because you'll be very bored or what's the word, jaded towards what you're doing if you don't have that ability to explore and mess around with things. I mean, I'm
Oh yeah,
assuming that many developers don't have that, don't have that luxury. If they're working in some
yeah.
rigid environment or something like that. Artists too,
It's
you know.
yeah, for real. I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, some of our work this time is, lately, I don't know, this has been a weird year for, I think, lots of folks in the industry.
Oh
This year
yeah,
for us, we've spent more time in the, like, you know, text editor code as code kind of like world, which has been really interesting to be not as deeply like in some of the visual side of it.
mm,
So it's been really interesting to try and figure out where's the way to like improv and find the
mm,
jazz, right? That's in that kind of like space that feels more strictly organized and kind of regimented, and still find a way to play there, because it's really, to your point, it's like so crushing when you don't have a space to, feel like you can stretch your legs and like,
totally,
you know, make a mess before you figure out how to clean it up.
totally. All right, so amazing first question. Um, this is great. So you grew up in California. You're a very Cali guy, and you studied. Besides obviously studying media and design, you studied arts, theater, and circus as well. I'd love to just hear a little bit about that period of your life, studying, growing up in California, the many modalities that you kind of learnt throughout that time.
Yeah. Oh man, what a weird. It's like, it's always weird to like fast forward, like rewind, fast forward. I guess is kind of like the feeling, right? Because like, so I grew up on the Central Coast, and as a typical like 16-year-old living 45 minutes away from Santa Barbara in a sleepy little town, I was like, oh, this is so boring. Like, the weather's always the same, and there's nothing's going on here, and I didn't really appreciate like what it
The
was,
best
right, to
weather
like
ever.
live in. Right. To live in the, Riviera of California. Like, oh yeah, but terrible. Um, so I graduated from high school. I did a couple years at a community college and studied design
Hmm.
and English. I imagined that I was going to be an English professor once
Oh
upon a time.
wow,
That's like
interesting.
the direction I thought I was going. And then felt like deeply unsatisfied with that. I'd been an actor when I was in high school, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to find a great acting program. So I ended up going to Cal State Fresno, of all places. Um, we used to, oh my God. So like, I, I had such a rowdy group of friends there, and we used to call ourselves the Fres Yes crew, because you would say Fresno and we'd say Fres Yes. Um, I know, and it's
That's
like feels
great.
like another lifetime. And there I was a actor dancer. I really studied theater, and imagined that I was gonna like look at circus training programs. I was specifically looking at École Nationale de Cirque, which is in Quebec, and so I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna like go audition. This is what I'm gonna do. I did a summer residency with a company called Diavolo Dance Theater, which is
Hmm.
like, it's a really interesting blend of kind of like highly acrobatic and it's like circus inspired dance. And it was like,
It's like
the
almost like a
company was
modern dance,
incredible. Yeah, it was like really, it was like if modern dance
contemporary.
and Cirque du Soleil like collided
Uh huh.
in like a super
Interesting.
collider, that's like what you'd end up with. And it was
Super
like
cool.
edgy and like a little bit more like unconventional theater. And it had,
Hmm.
I don't know, it was great. It was like it, ticked all the boxes for me. And I guess I was like 3 months away, maybe like 4 months away from graduating, and then I was in a car accident. Like, a car
Oh
hit
no.
me, going like 50 miles an hour at a stoplight, knocked me into another car, that into another car,
Shit.
spun me across 3 lanes. It was like a moment where like I remember like I blacked out, as you do in those
Shit.
situations. And like I remember like opening my eyes and like I had this little Honda Civic and like it was all crumpled behind me and it was like all the shit that was in my trunk was exploded on the road and I was like my car's exploded and am I exploded and where am I and this is so strange. I was like on my way to a performance.
Oh my God.
uh and I feel like as such a good little performer, I like the first phone call I made was to my stage manager and I was like, I'm so sorry, I was just in a car accident, I'm not going to be at the show tonight. And then I was like, I've got to go.
Oh my gosh.
um yeah, so like that happened and it like shook up my whole life. So I ended
Wow.
up moving from California after I graduated from my undergrad. I moved to the Northeast and I lived in Keene, New Hampshire.
Mm.
And I worked as a educational outreach counselor. I worked with at-risk youth ages 13 to 18 who were
Wow.
first in their family to go to college, and then provided educational services to them during the academic year, and then also ran a summer residential program. I'd done that one summer um, as like, as an acting teacher. And I was like, okay, like I'm not going to audition for this circus program anymore. But
Mm.
there was a circus school in Vermont. And so I was like, all right, well, I could go like try this thing with my life. It's better than like, slinging coffee at Starbucks. And uh, when else am I going to get an opportunity to move across the country and like,
Mm.
live in New England? Very like also like 18-year-old kind of idea
Yeah.
that like, oh yeah, like there will never be another opportunity for me to change my life, man. um, and so then I was like suddenly in the Northeast, which was like a radically wild and different experience.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did that for a couple years. I transitioned out of working in educational outreach for um, young people, and then instead worked I worked for a office called the Center for Engagement Learning and Teaching
Mm.
at the university, and there I taught faculty how to integrate technology into their curriculum.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, it's so funny to think about the kind of like arc of tools that we've seen, as the web has changed over the years. But I think about a bunch of years ago, like the idea of how you use, like there was no Google Classroom, there was no any of the things that we use now. And so I helped faculty do that. And it was in the middle of that experience that I started seeing the Amon Tobin ICM tour
Of
and
course.
like the projection mapping. And I was
Of
like, I
course.
got to learn how to do that.
So many
That's what I want to
people's
do.
like inspiration, like first inspiration.
Right. When
So
like
many.
a
It's crazy.
turning moment. And
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. Because I was
Yeah.
also like, I was, at the circus program and like gigging. And I was like, God, like I want to have like health insurance and,
Interesting.
you know, think about a life where I'm not just like hand to mouth all the time.
Right. Right. Like like not even freelance, like gigging economy. It's like even different.
Yeah,
Super
well, it's so weird
fascinating.
because it was like, yeah. So then I did a grad program at ASU, and that's where I kind of fell into TouchDesigner, like, and the wild wonder what it is. What? Amazing. And yeah, from there I like found my way to Obscura Digital.
Amazing. Okay, well, I'm gonna go back a little bit because you have such a,
Yeah.
your early life is so interesting and the trajectory is so fascinating, and a lot of the thing that I like to do on the show is kind of like understand the inspirations for people's trajectories and the catalysts that kind of push people towards things. So you kind of said the Amon Tubin thing is kind of the hay that broke the camel's back. I don't know if that's the right
Yeah, there you go.
place for
The
that,
straw.
but the straw. Thinking about it in Hebrew. Super cool. But so what was like your first inspiration into like becoming a dancer, theatrical? Is there somebody in your family or friend, or what was kind of the push to want to become, a theater kid? Was it just kind of a natural progression of things?
Yeah. So if I like rewind, so like I don't know, all our lives are weird, right? Like our stories are
For
complicated
sure.
and nuanced. I grew up in this like very conservative
Mm.
Christian experience,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
which is like not at all where I identify anymore, and like I've like found a different path in my life.
You found your
Um,
version of Jesus.
I found what's right for me, and like
Totally.
it shaped and changed me, and so I can be
Mm.
thankful for that. There are lots of things that maybe not, but it gave me like a lot of perspective on the world and definitely
Mm.
grounded me with a lot of ideas that I think probably in many respects I still hold on to in terms of
Mm.
organization and structure and
Of
you
course.
know fair treating of other human beings and how we should be just and kind to one another in this crazy world. um but I was like, I did what do you call them, like Christian music camps over the summers and doing
Huh.
all those things. So like
Interesting.
I did that all, probably from like when I was not even in preschool up through
Wow.
middle school. My grandfather was a music teacher. He like,
No way.
yeah, in the like wild arc that is the universe, Chuck Charles Fairman was a guitar player and musician that played here in Los Angeles and like snuck into clubs when he was like 14. His band members used to sneak him in so he could play on stage for them.
That's so cool.
Uh, yeah, he left. He went out into the Central Valley, and that's where he raised his family and was a music teacher. Um, and so I think the like music performance and those pieces have kind of like been long-standing threads that have kind of carried through my life.
Mm.
And so in high school, I was this like tall, lanky kid who wasn't particularly like sports inclined. I was like not very straight coded. And so I didn't really find a way to feel like I could fit into like any of the kind of traditional archetypes. And so theater was a place where I felt like I had community and could build community and find friends. And so I did that. I was so funny. A friend of mine, Jenny in Alaska, who knows if you'll ever watch this, Jenny like convinced me to go try out for a play that was happening. And then after that, I was hooked.
That's so cool. So you just kind of, it was almost like in your blood in some way to be a performer, and your trajectory into theater was kind of from your enjoyment as a kid. I love that. Um, so let's jump ahead a little bit. When you transitioned from kind of the more theater arts to the more technology and kind of implementing technology, what kind of, and this is not like I don't know how to say this without being rude, but like, what did you know about technology? Like, what were like, did you study computer science? Was your
hmm
were you just very nerdy? Like, what was your understanding of these technologies that you managed to get yourself into this position?
Yeah, 100%. Right. Like, I'm, I feel like, well, I feel very fortunate that many of us in the technology sector are like, one day we're like, I'm a god, I can do anything.
Yeah,
The other day,
totally.
you're like, I don't know anything about anything. And that's like the experience of working with computers. Like being a kid in the 80s is still weird to think about because there's like so many things that were moving. I think the first computer I worked with was not a Commodore, but oh God, it's gonna like escape me. It's in a blog somewhere. But was like not the Commodore 64, but like if you rewind earlier than that, you used to like have cassette tapes,
Yes.
and a program was recorded on
Um,
a cassette tape, and you would play the cassette tape and load that into memory, and then from there you could like run it.
it's on the tip of my tongue. The developer of Tool, Thomas, also started with these cassette tapes in Eastern Germany. It's very interesting.
It's like, so
Oh, what's the name of it?
I remember like we used to get magazines, and the program would be written in the magazine, and you would copy it line for line, and then you could run it, and you'd save it to a floppy disk, and it was like
Crazy.
crazy, right? So like that was my first exposure to kind of computing and what it was
But
to like
were
work
you
with
just
computers.
interested in it as like a nerdy, geeky kid, or was it something that you were like solving something or filling something? Like, what was the?
I think as a nerdy geeky kid, it was like that was like the first way that you could play computer games was like you had to like write the program yourself, right?
Gotcha.
And
Games.
then
Makes sense.
yeah, and my neighbors, so like the other like crazy thing, like we had close next door neighbors who were kind of like surrogate grandparents for me because my grandparents on my mom's side were like 4 hours away and on my dad's
Mm,
side were like 2 states away. And it was a time when like I don't know, people didn't travel or it doesn't feel like people traveled quite as
mm.
much. And my kind of surrogate grandfather figure, uh, he was a hardcore like early IBM DOS user,
Oh wow,
and
wow, wow,
so he would like bring me over and like taught me how to
Check this out,
type, taught me
kid.
my first word yeah, and like he'd sit me down and like sit me with the command prompt, and I'm like,
Amazing.
okay, I kind of don't know how this works, but all right, I got this enough to figure out how we like start this thing and I can write my paper here. Um,
Amazing.
and so I started there, and then found myself. We didn't really have like a computer club, but there's enough of us that were in that kind of like nerdy geeky space
Mm-hmm.
that like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about computers. I eventually started building my own computers.
Nice.
Um, back before there were you could get a discrete GPU, which is wild to think about. That's like
Crazy.
so much has changed. It's really
Yeah.
wild.
And you also got
Um,
to see it change in such a vast way. Um,
oh
but I guess
yeah, it's
once
like bananas.
once you get the bug and the itch, then it's like something that kind of just like stays with you, right? You just you whatever the new technology that comes out, you kind of learn it, you study it, you get you use it in some way. So that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure by the time you got to college, you were like you said, you were like a god. You didn't need to know how to actually do anything. You just needed to know what everybody else didn't know. Which is kind of like
Right. Well, it's also yeah.
no,
Go
please,
go.
no, please, you.
I think it's like it was the NeoCities era, right? That's like
Okay.
also the thing that was like happening.
Mm.
For those of you that don't remember that or didn't experience it, there was a time in the internet where before we had things like WordPress or um, Facebook or any of those kinds of structures, um, you would sign up for a NeoCities site, which was really just like a subdomain on top of NeoCities, and you would upload your own HTML. We'd not even really CSS at that point. You just upload the HTML version of your website, and that's where you'd like build an online identity. Like we didn't really even blog. You could build other pages, but it was like also a time where your friend would like you'd go to their page and all of a sudden you'd be playing music and you'd be like, how did you do that? I also need to play some shitty Nine Inch Nails MIDI track when you come to my NeoCities. Like, how do I do
Is
that? Okay,
is
how do I do like cool flashing
NeoCities
lights?
is NeoCities pre-GeoCities?
Sorry, GeoCities. Oh my god.
Okay. I was
NeoCities,
confused. I wasn't sure
GeoCities.
if that was something else. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Sorry.
GeoCities. That's like, it's so weird to think that was like
It's
a way
that
so
was the
many of
thing.
us use the internet.
That was the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that was I even remember that as like a 12-year-old, like just not even knowing how to actually use it, but geocities.com/whatever, that was like where you went to
Yeah.
check out the cool stuff.
That was it. That was where all this fun stuff was. It's like it's so weird to see like the instant messenger and ICQ
Oh,
early
ICQ
eras
times. Oh
and
my
then the
God.
message boards that like existed, and like in so many ways it feels like things like Slack and
Yeah.
Signals
Return.
or Signal, like it's all like a circle, right? It's all this
Totally.
weird like return to our roots
I mean,
constantly.
ICQ was just so mind-blowing. Like being like
Oh,
you
yeah,
didn't
it
have
was.
I didn't have a cell phone, right? It was a little bit before smartphones, so I didn't get a cell phone. I also grew up in a very conservative Jewish household, but somehow I had a computer. I don't know how that managed. I built it myself, but like being able
Mhm.
to talk to friends on this like little messenger thing was just so powerful. Like,
It was
what if
wild.
it was wild, and you're sharing shit on the internet, and it's like clicking links, opening up things on your computer. It was just like, what is going
Oh
on
man.
here? It was so crazy.
And it was this weird blend of like synchronous, asynchronous that I see all the time in Slack now, right? It's like you would put an away message and you like go,
Yeah,
you'd like
totally
be
an away
playing like,
message.
you know, on your Nintendo or whatever. You'd
Yeah.
come back to like see the messages that people had left, or you'd join a room and like see all the conversation that was happening.
And then you find like a room,
So,
like an ICQ room of like some other country or like some other thing, and you're like, what is going on in here? Like,
right.
what is going on in here? Oh, what good times. And then the internet died, supposedly. But I don't like that theory so much, but there is a very distinct difference in the internet today, versus like 20 years ago. And I think that there was like kind of like a little bit of a bell curve. There was like a peak at some point of like the height of internet where it was like so advanced, maybe like the beginning of Facebook, where you can start talking. And like, I remember traveling and then getting somebody's Facebook and then being in touch with them. And it was like it was much better than email, because you see their pictures and you see their statuses, and it's kind of like this thing. And then very quickly it became just like a mess of BS. But there was like this moment where it's like, oh, we're interconnected, and there's this like international kind of like way of connecting and being in touch with people. And then it's like, oh, ads and data and who knows what else is going
Right.
on.
Commodified, right? Like it becomes
Commodified.
so heavily. What my favorite thing is like if you're not paying for it, you're the product, right?
Totally. Yeah, that's like something that we still don't understand. Like, everybody knows that that's the truth, and there's so many free things on the internet, but nobody, even myself, like, I still use these things and I'm like, oh, it's free, great, but like, how is it free? What's going on? You don't even think about it.
Yeah, it's not right.
Crazy.
And that's the part that hurts always. Is you're like,
Yeah.
oh, right. I've just like, I've given away all this information
Yeah.
about everything. Oh,
Totally.
okay. Well, here we are.
It's a post privacy world, but privacy is still, if not the more important nowadays, because of this kind of like everything is everywhere. I just saw this demo. This demo was so crazy. It's like the Meta glasses, the Ray-Ban ones. They're not even like that smart. They have AI, but this guy's like walking around and he's streaming the video to like somebody offline. I think it was like an MIT, and the guy on his computer is running the image through like databases, and it's like, hey, is your name this? Hey, I saw that post you made, and it's like, he wasn't being nefarious with it, but it's like so easily nefarious. And it's like, you don't even think like where your name and information is and how that's tied to your image. And it's like just something as simple as Facebook, right? Like, done. Facebook, cross-reference that with like, voter databases, cross-reference that with some, insurance database, and it's like done. Which is kind of crazy to think about that's already here, and it's not like the government. It's like personal people doing it, with their Meta glasses.
That's the thing that's like so wild. That one that like trips, I feel like I have such an interesting relationship with technology these days, because there are parts of it that are like so inspiring and exciting in so many ways, and kind of like the trajectory of how things are moving. And then there's this other side of it where you'll have a moment where you like pierce the veil of whatever corporate conglomerate, and you're like, oh, I see exactly the through line of how this like feature is actually this like just like sucking some part of my life away. And the one that like uncovered from me the other day was there was a Google Maps update, and now they're like, oh, look, we'll give you like a little estimate of the speed that you're traveling. And it's like, oh, great. I'm confident that you're going to cross-reference that against like my driving history, and then sell that information
to the
collectively, right, to
insurance agencies,
law enforcement,
whatever.
to insurance agencies, to car manufacturers. Like, that's just another piece of information that you're going to like absorb and then commodify.
Yeah.
Which is like,
there's such a fine line between convenience and like feature to like dystopia, or like not even dystopia. You don't have to go that far, but just to like things hindering yourself, like your insurance going up, or like, a cop pulling you over and being able to see all this information about you. It's like, it's crazy. And I think there is a fine line, and some technology companies really ride that line really well. This is like a very weird segue, but TouchDesigner is one of those technology companies. So you kind of hinted on how you discovered TouchDesigner, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and what made you. You're an obviously, and from hearing a little bit more about you, you're obviously like a natural born educator, something that you kind of like always wanted to do and very natural at it. You became an educator so early on in your career, while you were in college even. So, what was kind of the catalyst, I like to use that word, of deciding to teach TouchDesigner as a college course, and kind of how did you discover the almighty TouchDesigner?
Two really interesting things happened to me on my way to grad school. So as I was leaving the Northeast, I had a mentor, Daryl Hux, who he made me promise him that if I did nothing else while I was in grad school, that I would write about what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
He was an incredible human being, is an incredible human being. I wrote a couple papers with him. He was faculty at Keene State College, where I was working as faculty support. And so he would put together programs for kind of training his undergraduate students in using technology inside of their courses. And then he would write papers about it, and then invited me to co-author them, which was like an
It's
incredible
amazing.
honor in hindsight. I like really can't appreciate how wonderful that was. And Daryl was like, you have to keep writing.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, I'll keep writing. I went to started my grad program, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start a blog, and what I'll do is I'll just like write about whatever it is that I'm doing, like whatever I'm learning, whatever I'm uncovering. That's what I'm gonna write about. And
Mm.
I think what was interesting for me is that like I jumped into this grad program with this idea that like grad school was going to be a place where they would probably like teach me some of these like technologies and tools and things that were that I wanted to like learn and understand. And I didn't really appreciate that so many of those pieces, especially in the live entertainment space, were so bleeding edge that if anyone doing it wasn't teaching it, they were like in the field doing it.
Mm.
Um, and so there weren't a lot of, you know, instructors to go to and be like, teach me how to projection map. They'd be
Right.
like, that sounds really cool. You should, learn how to projection map. I'd be
Right.
like,
Or I have
but
a friend
how?
that does it or something.
Right, exactly. And so uh, I started my kind of like arc in grad school with processing, and then from processing used Isadora, and then used Isadora and Quartz Composer. Those were like two of the tools I used a lot
Oh, wow.
when I was first doing shows.
Callbacks.
I know, right? Like what a rewind! Like, oof, Quartz Composer, we love you, we miss you.
We miss you.
Ugh,
Yeah, for sure.
Apple, why? Um, and was like, I was deep in the kind of like Apple ecosystem at the time. I'd been a PC
Mm.
user. I had shifted to working in the kind of like Mac universe for a
Mm-hmm.
while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was taking this, I was trying to do an independent study to like learn to do like a deeper dive on Isadora Quartz Composer and like build better tooling, because I had used it in a couple shows and it was cool, but it was like, the arc to getting something up and running for production
Mm.
felt like it was so long and
Mm-hmm.
so messy that I was like, I
Mm.
just need more time. So I was like trying to find a faculty member that would sponsor me for an independent study. And everyone I talked to was like, no, 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 you don't want to learn those things. And finally I found an instructor who was like, that's interesting, but what you should really learn is this thing called TouchDesigner, but I don't have time to help you. But that's what you should
Go
do.
figure it out.
Right. And I was like, I was partially so offended that this person who was supposed to be like helping me learn was like, yeah, how about you go pound sand? I was
I'll
like,
show you.
well, right. Cause he was also like, I haven't had a chance to learn it, but that's what you should learn. And I
Right,
was
right,
like,
right,
fine, I will learn it.
right. Yeah. I'll teach it
Whoa,
here one day.
yeah, take that. Jeez. It's not fair. And so I like went home. I went to OWC. I bought a Windows dual boot conversion kit for my
Mm.
MacBook
Oh,
Pro.
wow.
Um, I took out my, disk drive because I didn't use that anymore. I put in a second hard drive. I set it up so I could dual boot, so I could have Windows and Mac on the same laptop. Because I wasn't
OG
quite ready to let go of
Hackintosh.
the, yeah, like I wasn't totally ready to let go of the kind of like Isidore toolkit that I'd already learned, because Izzy was a piece of software that we used a lot in kind of theatrical environments. Because it is really, I don't know, have you ever used Isadora?
I've never used it personally, but I've seen many workshops on it and kind of understand the the concept behind it. It is very focused on theater, right?
Yeah, it's very like node graphy,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like composed in this idea that you have things that are scenes, and so you can transition between
Right.
worlds that are scenes. And so it was really helpful when I was designing shows in grad school, where it was like, I need to play this movie, then transition to play this movie, and then like do this weird effect, and then we're going to transition to another scene. And like, I don't need to build a scene changer or understand like all the mechanics of how everything is going to work.
Yeah. It's very
And
powerful.
so,
I actually I think I'm pretty sure I met the creator of it at LPM like a few years like
yeah, Mark
a while ago.
Camilio.
Super nice guy.
Mark's
But
such
it
a
but
like super nice person.
yeah, but it did seem like it was really geared towards like theater performance and less like visuals, and like they kind of
Hmm.
tacked that on as that became more of a thing.
I think definitely there's like way more kind of like, it has more of a foot in the kind of like analog
Right.
synthy kind of world.
Right.
Um, and so I was like, I'm gonna learn TouchDesigner. And so then I like set up my machine. I like bricked it twice in the process. I finally got it
Oh
back,
no.
up and running. At like 3 a.m. and I'm like, my computer's not working, and I have class in the
Oh,
morning, and so we got to
shit.
figure this out. Um,
But I gotta
and
show that
and then
professor
from
that I can do
right,
it.
oh, eat it. Um, and so I finally got that all up and running, and then I got TouchCenter installed. That was back in '88. It had just converted from 77 to '88. It was
Mm.
they were right in that moment. This is like mind blowing to think about, right? So this was before Python, when it was only TScript, and it was
There was
their
no
transition
Python
moment.
in TouchDesigner?
No, it used to be just TScript.
What? That's
Yeah.
crazy to think about.
88's transition was like, there was
But
a experimental with 88 that brought Python.
but isn't TScript like a Python? It's just an internal Python?
TScript is their like OG scripting language. It's like
Uh-huh.
more like Bash than it's like Python.
Gotcha. Wow, I never knew that. I thought it was always kind of like in the back end was always kind of there. That's crazy. That's
No.
crazy to think about that
Yeah,
it
so
wasn't.
like
Wow, what a
that wasn't at
transition.
all.
That must have changed
So
so much.
oh, it was huge. I convinced somehow. Well, I think what happened was I was using Rouge, Mary Frank's VJ tool,
Okay.
for a show, and then
Wow.
managed to get in contact with Mary, and then got Mary to come out to ASU to do a workshop. And then from there, I was like, all right, I've got to just like, I got to learn how to use this.
Mhm.
And that was like the beginning of the end. And then it was like, I'm going to write about everything I've learned, because it was Richard Burns was the only person that had
Mm.
really tutorials. And then there
Shout
were
out.
these, yeah, oh my God,
I love
Richard,
his
you're
tools.
the, wow. OG.
Yeah, totally.
And then like the other things that they had, I don't know if you've ever seen some of these old tutorials, but Derivative has these old tutorials from Mutex, because they would usually do
Oh, I
workshops
don't think
at
I've seen them.
Mutex, and it would be like some either in the basement or like in a space where you could still hear the stage
Okay.
from the workshop. And so the whole like, it's like one
Was
four
it
hour
Greg
video of
or somebody else?
like it was
Malcolm or
Greg
something?
teaches some of them. Richard does some of them. Barry Through is featured in some of those
Oh
pieces.
wow,
Um,
so
yeah,
crazy.
it's like wild to think that like, and that used to be the only way to learn it. And I was like,
Right.
I started blogging and kind of like making tutorials, because I was like, selfishly, like, I'm never going to remember how to do all these
Ah,
things.
keeping
And
it for
so
yourself.
this is like
Smart.
partially for me to like remember
Mm.
how I did this. It's like I made a deal with my advisor that I was going to write about what I was doing.
Mm.
And then and I guess it was my last year at ASU. Um, I was asked if I wanted to take over teaching a processing course, and they were like, "You can use whatever tool you want. You don't have to use processing, but it's really like the
Wow.
fundamentals of interactive computing." And I was like, "Great. Well, I would like to use TouchDesigner." And they're like, "We don't care. That's fine with us."
That's amazing, huh? That's really cool that
And I was
they
like,
didn't
"Great.
have any like requirements or anything like that. It's so cool. Was
Yeah."
TouchDesigner still
That
free?
was.
Like they still had a free version back then?
Mhm.
Always? Yeah.
They did. That was always the commercial
Yeah.
license.
Yeah.
The non-commercial
No
license was
commercial.
like
Amazing.
where it was at. It
Amazing.
was like, I don't
What an
know that
amazing
I would do that
company.
again. It's like such a like bananas like rewind. Think about like 50 undergraduates in a room, and I'm like, I don't know how I did demos, taught things, and like walked around and helped everybody like,
And recorded them
get their
and,
code working.
get the whole thing.
Well, there I was like, right then it was like a rewind to my educational support days for faculty, where like there was like early on there was this whole idea like you invert your classroom format. So like rather than doing the lecture in class, deliver the lecture as video and assign that as homework. Like do that
Gotcha.
before you get here, and then when you get here, we'll
Oh,
do the stuff that's actually
interesting.
hard because you're gonna have questions and we got to like figure out how to connect the stuff. And so we'll do
Is
that
that
with the time
common?
that's really
I never really
valuable.
went to university. I went to art school, so we didn't have anything. Is that like a common like process of like you send the class beforehand?
Uh, I don't know what it's like now, right? Like post COVID, it's all crazy.
Both, yeah, no, for
Um,
sure, for sure. Everything's online now, for sure.
right. But like pre-COVID, there was like a big there's a bunch of research by educational developers trying to figure out like what are the best ways to use our class time, and like the best use of our time, our like limited amount of time together isn't necessarily me like reciting the slides of my
Right.
lecture to you. The like time that we spend together might be best used for doing the work that engages you with your peers, that has creates opportunities for you to ask your instructor questions, or build some of those like really important kind of unifying moments between your classmates and your instructor, or the person that actually has the kind of foundational knowledge that's going to be like impactful for you. um, and so I started recording the videos because it was like, this is my content that I was going to give to my students. And it was also, I was really invested in the idea that if I was going to evaluate you, I was also like a real stickler for like, what does evaluation mean in these circumstances? I didn't really like the idea that we had these kind of like abstract notions of grades, like I'm going to grade you on the quality of your visuals. Like
Right,
that's
right.
weird.
That would be weird.
I'm not going to do that. Right. I'm going to grade you on the like, did you meet all the technical requirements? And like, if you made something like aesthetically interesting, that's like icing on the cake. But
Yeah.
did you use a variety of operators from these different families? Did you connect them in this way? Did you use expressions? Are you using your Python correctly? Did you follow the architectural paradigm that we talked about? And it was also really important for me to be able to point back to the moments in the class where you should have learned that. Like, this is the concept you're missing. Like,
Go check that
rewind
video.
to
Right.
minute 5 here, right? Like that's the ingredient that you're missing in this final moment.
That's so cool. I guess it also tied into kind of your ethos of recording and documenting everything. You can kind of have your classes documented, sharing it online. Super fascinating. Are there any? This is like a weird question, but are there any students that you still are in touch with, or that kind of made careers out of the touch designer and in that kind of world?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm trying to think about like students from that class. I don't know. That class of undergraduates I didn't keep track of because it was
Which one?
like
AME
also my
three
last
six
year in
five
grad
or
school.
TP one nine
That's
four?
it.
Is that the right numbers?
AME
Is that the right
360.
numbers? I don't remember.
Yep, that's it. That's it.
It's stuck in my head forever.
That was like, oh man. But THP 495, that was a
THP.
upper division course that I offered, and folks there have still used TouchDesigner. Michael Bateman, what up, Michael Bateman? Was also a graduate student at ASU. He's now a one of the lead educators for Pixera
Nice.
for their training program.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then Ian Shalansky, who's also in
Of
SudoMagic,
course.
was learning TouchDesigner at the same time
Nice.
I was. Um, so yeah, there's still folks out there. It's weird to think that that's like still part of the through line that exists.
Of course. I mean, it's a pretty important one. I'm actually gonna just shout it out a moment here. If anybody doesn't know, Matthew's blog is still up and running. I mean, there is like over a decade's worth of information here, teaching, so much stuff here. This, by the way, is one of the most. If I can click on it normally. What's going on here?
Oh
Let's go
no!
from here. The where is it? The this where is it?
Wow, this is like such a blast from the past for me.
For you, but so many of us still here. No, not the shortcuts. What the fuck is it? It's this cheat sheet. Let me find that.
Oh yeah,
The cheat sheet, the operator
Man.
cheat sheet. This one. This is so useful. I sometimes actually copy this into ChatGPT just so it has the basics and it
context,
understands
yeah,
the context, and it works. It's like some things are kind of, obviously at this point I'm much more proficient, but like some of the things here are so nice little examples and clean that are just so good. Yeah, anybody that's trying to get into TouchDesigner, some things are a little bit old in terms of like the TouchDesigner versions, but the concepts and structure of how things are built and the courses are so valuable. And I truly believe it will make you a better TouchDesigner user if you just kind of watch it, even if you don't necessarily utilize the concepts, or maybe the operations are changed and different, but the overarching kind of architecture and how to look at a system is so unique and powerful. So definitely check out that website. And
have you checked out the new learn.derivative.ca site?
Yes, for sure. Have you been doing stuff there as well?
Yeah, so
Okay.
SudoMagic's worked with Derivative to help
Okay.
spin that all up. And
Okay,
so
awesome. I didn't
the
know that.
Learn site is really interesting because all of the 101 stuff is all
Revamped.
some most intense materials we've ever made, I think. But they're all 7 minutes or less. And so the intention being, when you're like trying to figure out like, how do I do this like little micro operation? I don't want to watch the 20-minute video. I want to be able to like splice my way right into how do expressions and binds work, right?
Okay, even better.
And so
Where is that? That's in is that in their Learn user guide? No, it's gonna be in the
learn.deriv.ca. And then on the top there, there should be a 101 course, and there's a 201 course now too.
Oh wow, I did not. Maybe I didn't know about this. This looks totally different than what I thought. I thought it was like the learning tab on the website. This is totally not what I. Oh, this is really good.
It's wild. The other like super fun thing in there.
Why this is like not? Why are they not marketing this properly? Come on, Derivative.
They've featured it a couple times. It's been like it's in their Instagram stories. They like have done blog posts about it.
Gotcha.
So they've certainly like shouted it out.
Oh, this is great. Oh wow, this is really great. Yeah.
What's crazy is you'll see that like all these are packed into lessons. The lessons, as you unfold them, will be kind of like deeper, all the way down to topics.
Oh wow.
There's a blurb about every single one of these, and then
nice.
Any of these also have a talks that comes with it that you can download. That's got annotations and a bunch of different
amazing
kind of like
super
goodies
useful.
to help you walk through.
I always feel with TouchDesigner, it's like there's, especially nowadays, there's so much information on YouTube, but a lot of it is missing the fundamentals. And like, you can definitely learn TouchDesigner by watching tutorials, but some of them are going to be like very specific processes, or like how to do this or how to do that, how to get a nice picture or image. But then when you want to do something on your own, you get a little bit lost. So this is great. That's why I tell people to go to check out your stuff, because even though it's a little bit outdated, it still has that kind of fundamental of like, what are these things? But that's really good to know. Learn.derivative.ca, definitely linking that. Thank you for taking part in that. That's really awesome. Really, really awesome.
It's like been a really interesting space, I think, also to like tease out some of the kind of like micro ideas that are so hard in TouchDesigner to kind of like uncover sometimes. And so
There's
you'll
even
see
a
things
curriculum
in there, like
navigator. Wow, that's so cool. Like a whole
that's like
a whole component
yeah.
that helps you
There's
learn. Amazing.
a top that will load the video on the left side along with the copy, and then load the
That's
examples on the right
just
side.
great. That's so great. I love that. Super cool. So let's shift a little bit now to current or a little bit pre-current, Matthew. Obscura Digital. For those who don't know, Obscura Digital is, I'm probably not going to do it justice, but it's one of the at least in that time, biggest immersive and interactive companies focused around like systems and developing and design. That was then bought by MSG, and I think they were bought pre-Sphere, but if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
But when that whole thing was kind of happening, I'd love to know how much they got bought for. I don't know if you have that information, but that would be.
Don't know. They didn't tell
to
us.
know. I'd love to know.
Oh,
Such a.
I know.
As a Jew, I need to know these things. Like sit in my head forever. But
I feel like not enough. Just like understanding like the tumultuous like
I can imagine
flow of everything.
Well, I only heard of Obscura like post it being bought when I came to America, like 4 or 5 years ago, and I never really connected the dots of what they did, and then you start hearing, oh, TouchDesigner, ran the billboards for this thing and did the thing, ran the system for this installation and for this office and whatever, and then you're like, oh, really? That's interesting. And it's like, oh yeah, Obscura Digital, oh yeah, Obscura Digital, and then you connect all the things, and then they got bought by MSG. You're like, what? Like an interactive company like did something for a client and then got bought by them, which is just so wild. So yeah, please tell us a little bit about that kind of experience, and then we can kind of taper off and talk about what it was like to work on the Sphere.
Yeah, absolutely. So the wild thing about Obscura, that's like, it's still a fever dream, right? Like, it's hard for us to kind of appreciate this now, but if we like rewind back to the Obscura days, part of what Obscura was wrestling with was the tools for building playback and like big systems for like permanent installations and events were relatively limited. So there was like Watchout. Watchout was like a tool that you could use that had a kind of like traditional timeline system.
You're gonna give me anxiety.
Really no,
I'm joking.
A good, no, me too, man.
Oh my god!
It didn't have a great tool for mapping, right? It was
in
like,
Israel. Watchout is like the disguise of the rest of the world. In Israel, if you do any big show, it's all Watchout. They invested heavily, like all the companies invested heavily into Watchout, and they never shifted. So it's like you were forced to use these antiquated systems. But sorry, continue.
No, that's so interesting. So like, fun fact about Watchout. So like, my advisor from grad school, Jake Pinholster, was worked as a projection designer and associate on Wicked when it was touring. And part of what they built was a Quartz Composer patch that let them run all of their traditionally like rendered video through a distortion map to then like render out to files they could play back all the mapped content in Watchout because there were no mapping tools, right? Which is like
the backwards
bananas.
It's bananas.
Wow.
I feel like so much of these high level things are that bananas. You like hear how they did it and you're like, why? Just use something else. But
because we literally didn't have the things to do it then, which is right. Like the trick that we used, this trick is still like, this is okay. I shouldn't complain because like in a pinch, this will save your life, right? Like if you're working on a show or a job where like you don't have a powerful machine or you're like not going to have the time to do the mapping, you like put up a projection grid off of your projector and take your cell phone, you set it right on top, like as close to where the lens is as you can. You take a photo, and then you use that in Photoshop to figure out like how you're going to
the
like
distortions. That's so smart.
distort and map your content, and then you can run that through After Effects or whatever to like get your projection map, and that's like that'll get you 95% of the way there, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you're at a music festival, maybe that would be like a really good solution to something. But if you're being paid by a client to do something, I don't know if that's the best solution.
No, that's not great. That's not. But if you're doing the theater show and you've got like, you know,
you've got
6
a deadline
and like a roll of gaff tape, then like
go for it.
You'll make it work.
Go for it.
And so Obscura exists at this time where Disguise doesn't exist yet as a tool that you can buy. There's your options are like Watch Out or QLab. QLab doesn't have any distortion tools in it, and so Obscura doubled down on, all right, well, we're going to build the tools that we need. So they have a very similar story to United Visual Artists, right? Because United Visual Artists had this like artistic flow of input, and then they also had the technical pieces, right? And so when they fractured, right, part of them went off to make Disguise. They're like, we're going to focus on building the tool that solves this problem. And then the other half went off and were like, we don't really care about the tool side of it. We really want to think about the visuals that we're building. And Obscura was like, we're going to do both. And we're going to like roll our own solutions and stand up a software development team to help figure that out. And so that's, I think, a big part of where the kind of energy and Obscura was like coalesced around how are we going to take this toolkit and use it to not only do the projection mapping and kind of like visual work that we want to do, but use it for all the sensing, people tracking, and interactive elements that we want to actually build into experiences as well. And so Obscura kind of started in this like crazy pirate ship kind of way where they were building the tools and building the content and figuring out how to solve those problems at the same time. When I joined Obscura, we were like right in the middle. Obscura had for a long time been deep in the events market. So like they had done tons of the event space, but they were spinning up another division that was really focused on permanent installations. And I was brought in unbeknownst to me at the time, to really work on thinking about permanent installations, how we built things that were going to be operated by other people and that needed to operate consistently for long periods of time.
Like almost like
and so
interface building or like some sort of logic, UI logic or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we really were the kind of like magic of events, right? Is like you had the developer there to be like, fix this problem. And when we started to think about installations, we're like, okay, we need things that can turn themselves off, turn themselves back on. They can recover from disaster. They have a UI layer in front of them that some other operator can interact with and use. We have like redundant systems. How do we integrate with the video switchers and all the other kind of like infrastructural elements so that we can roll from our primary system to our backup system? And like all of those pieces, right? I think what was crazy to me, I came out of grad school, the most machines I'd worked with on a single installation, I think was 6. And then my first gig at Obscura was 21 machines. Yeah. It was like, no, 24, because it was 12 primaries and 12 backups. And I was like, I am not in Kansas anymore. Let me tell you what. Jeez. Okie doke. Here we go. And so that was like, interesting for Obscura was like, they didn't, Disguise like emerged, D3 at the time before they changed their name.
Yeah.
Was like starting to show up. They were still like relatively challenging from a like, I don't know, Obscura was like a big company. I think of them as like a big company. They were really like, there were like 25 of us full time. We weren't actually, I guess like 50 was maybe the biggest we were full time. So it wasn't like we were huge. And and we were in San Francisco and had San Francisco rents to pay for our property, and right, so it was like the idea of like throwing down all the capital investment for disguised servers
Right.
to then not be able to get under the hood and like make changes
Oh, it doesn't
was
make any sense.
really hard. Right, because you're like, okay, that's great if we only want to do projection mapping content, but what if we were like, we need to map this building, but we also need an input for this, like, you know, connect or this touch screen that's going to like do this other weird thing in the middle of the gig, and like, there wasn't enough flexibility there. Because that was also before any of the notch integration had come out, and so we had like a little software team that was like always juggling some number of jobs. It was like, you know, there was I never did the ones in the Middle East, but we had a crew that was like, had big event jobs they did for like a big like mosque square that was all projection mapped. Or we did another gig that was the interior of a sphere, right? It had like a little like catwalk that went through the middle of it, and it was like entirely a whole sky map, right? That was like all around you. And then there was like projection mapping on the Vatican. The Obscura was the first projection map, the Sydney Opera House.
Really?
Right? They were like,
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like so wild. They were like,
that's because that's like they have that projection mapping festival now in Australia. I can't remember what it's called, but they do that pretty often. It's crazy that they were the first to do that. Super cool.
It's like really wild to think about Obscura as being a place that was really on the like the front of that way, trying to figure out like how are we going to do kind of big spaces. They also did a thing that was like I still very rarely see, but is like one of the most interesting techniques from a mapping perspective. So a lot of times you'll see a big architecture that needs a lot of projectors, right? Empire State Building, Vatican, those places. They have this idea that you stack projectors, right, to get to increase your brightness. And so you stack some n number of projectors in order to make sure that the image is bright enough for you to see. And a lot of kind of turnkey tools these days have the kind of idea that every projector is an output, and we do all of the warping in software. Obscura would do a hardware convergence step first. They would converge the lenses and focus them so that they were all tightly mapped on top of one another. Do just the minute tweaking
just with
the software,
like just up and down or whatever, like the lens shift, things like that.
Exactly. So all your lens shift up and down, the tiny little bit of keystoning that you could do, so that you get all the projectors converged.
As close as possible.
8 projectors, right, that only are one channel of video.
Wow. So you can save on your outputs. All those, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, like Art on the Mart, when we did that in Chicago, it was like that was really only 3 4K plates. So it was like one server that could drive the whole thing for that, even though it was 36 projectors.
Jeez. It's crazy.
And that's like, and that's a little bit of engineering that's like really interesting, right? Because in some ways it's like more computers isn't necessarily more better. More computers is usually more headache.
For sure.
In my experience.
For sure.
So a team that really thought about like how do we solve these problems in ways that are going to kind of create the least amount of friction for the tools that we're using was really interesting.
I think it's really, having the ability to have an internal team that can design and think about systems is very powerful. And you hit the nail on the head before when you said like disguise wasn't an option for us because it was closed, which is my whole gripe with. I have a lot of gripes with software companies and hardware companies, but my main gripe with some of them is that they're closed. Or let's be positive. Why I love TouchDesigner so much is that it's open. That you can kind of do what you want to do if you have the idea and the ability. And I think that's so much more valuable to hire like 4 or 5 people or one person that can do whatever it is that you want with this tool, instead of paying the same amount for a piece of hardware and software that will then you're tied to it. If you want to scale, you're tied to it. If you want to change something, you're tied to it. And maybe for some legacy clients, maybe that's not so bad because you have the phone number of the main developer and you can ask them to add a feature. Totally okay, but that's not 90% of the people. So I personally would always choose the open-ended framework, even if you have to build the tools yourself, even if it's going to cost a lot of money to build the tools yourself, because the outcome is much more freeing. And it might be counterintuitive in some situations. Maybe I shouldn't say always. Like maybe there's some specific situation where you want that turnkey solution. It makes more sense for that. Maybe there's, budget is not a concern or something like that. But I still would rather go the route of being able to control everything and have the ability to change things without having to jump through hoops or be tied to some sort of system. And I think Obscura is like a really good example of that because they chose to stay that path instead of being like, oh, we're a media experiential company, that can do what everybody else can do. It's like, no, we can actually build whatever you want, and not have to make it cost scale or exponential. Which I think is really powerful.
That was like such a exciting part of working at Obscura was like, it was a group of people that were never afraid to build tools that didn't exist. Or to say like, that's cool, we love that. I don't like exactly the way that works and we want to own it. And so like that was...
Yeah. Wow, that's true. Right, because when you're developing something at such a high level, you can say to the client like, okay, we're going to do it, but it's ours now. Which is also like, having IP is also super powerful. Especially in this space of, digital media. It's like, that's really where you can blast off is if you have the IP of something really, really successful.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's really interesting because I think that there's, I've seen like, running SudoMagic with two other incredible people. I think we see both sides of that now. And we're like, sometimes we'll meet with a client. I'm like, the right solution for you is to use a turnkey tool. Like you don't have the budget to hire the developers to like build the thing that you actually need. And 98% of what you want is really like a timeline. Like, okay, like
we have that. Yeah.
Maybe this, like there's a tool, there's a thing that you can buy that does that. And when you're ready to actually take that next step and really dive deep into a kind of custom solution that we know that you're going to want, then like, let's come back to build that thing.
I definitely want to jump into SudoMagic because it's more current. Just a little bit about the Sphere, like what you kind of worked on that, and how was that like? What was that experience like? This, insane idea that you're like, I would have been like, nah, it's not gonna work. Don't even try it.
I think there were definitely moments when all of us were like, I don't know how this is ever gonna work. For sure. It was interesting. We were no strangers to the experience of domes. And I think like Sphere is sometimes like a little bit, it's like not, it's a little deceiving, right? Because really it's like a half dome and you sit inside of it and it's really like a big dome experience. I think what's interesting is that this is like one of those experiences I think back and I'm like, this is so... What a like privileged experience at Obscura that so few people get to actually have is that we had a dome in our demo room 100% of the time. Like,
wow.
For the years that I worked at Obscura, there was never a moment where there wasn't a 5-channel projection dome.
Right.
Like
something
in the
dome related going on.
Yeah. And so you spend a lot of time in those spaces trying to understand like, okay, not only how do the technical pieces of the like mapping and the blending and all those elements work, but also sitting in the dome and thinking about the illusion that it creates, like the epicenter of that, what's like super powerful and kind of like changing about those experiences, and then like which parts of the experiences are like gonna be broken and not gonna work.
Right.
Exactly. And I think part of what was interesting is that the whole journey with Obscura and MSG started really with a white paper and mom.design. I'm going to check now to to see. Yeah, Minds Over Matter, the original founders of Obscura, started another studio called Mom.Design, or called Mom, Minds Over Matter, and they've actually shared a part of the case study that they started with MSG, which is really interesting if you want to kind of like snapshot what's the headspace for approaching kind of like venues of the future and the ideas that they wanted to explore. So they did a whole kind of like in-depth exploration of what works about us dome environments, what are the illusions that are the most impactful and changing for audiences, what are all the constraints and considerations about where's the audience, where's the sweet spot for seeing it, how do you build relationships between what's happening on stage to what's happening in the audience, where do you place the horizon line inside of the sphere so that it feels like a natural continuation of the world that you live in.
Wow.
All of those pieces, which was super interesting.
Yeah.
When we started with Sphere, I transitioned from being just a developer at Obscura to being the associate director for software, and then during our acquisition, I transitioned to being the director of real-time content generation.
Wow.
And so I led a team that was really kind of like built around the idea. It's like so interesting now to see like how far it's all moved.
Right.
But at the beginning part of that conversation, there was like, it was hard to make a case for why we needed real-time content inside of that venue.
Interesting. Really?
And like, oh yeah, 100%. Like, the kind of
from your end or from their end?
From their end, from like
Gotcha.
the organizational side. And
you don't need that.
When I think of Madison Square Garden as a like organization, right? Like they come to this primarily from the perspective of managing spaces and venues and not necessarily making shows.
Right, content or whatever.
Yeah, they have a number of productions that they run, but they don't necessarily kind of think about the production side of this. And especially for a venue that big and having worked in domes, right? It's like, in my mind, I was like, there's no way I can see myself building a show in that venue and not wanting to be like, can we rotate the skybox?
Right, of course.
Degrees?
right.
Like, to me, the worst thing in the world would be like, I would like the skybox rotated 15 degrees, and then for someone to come back and be like, great, you can see that next week.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's such a high resolution that it's going to take so long to do anything. It's so true. Yeah, it's so conducive to the real-time workflow of changing and experimentation and trying things out. Yeah, very interesting. Right? But they didn't understand that.
No, it was really, really hard. And so like the interesting part about some of my role at MSG, especially in that early time, in that particular period, was I wrote a lot of documents that were intended for communicating to more of the C-suite folks about what's the importance of real-time tools, what's their place, what problems do they solve, why do we need to have them, what offering does that provide to shows and acts that are coming through the venue, and why is this a critical piece of investment and consideration that we need to do? Right, because the other side of that equation is also like there's a tremendous amount of risk involved in building a venue that large, and so I don't think that MSG totally wanted to assume the kind of like risk of we're going to also build the software that runs it, right? There's a safety in being able to say like, disguise, we have a huge contract with you, like show up and fix the thing, like, why isn't this working?
I mean, the irony is what ended up happening and where it is now.
Right. That's like, it's like so interesting for me to like,
I can't like this is really
this
kind
rodeo and be like, okay.
It's kind of blowing my mind a little bit because I have a little bit. I'm not going to mention who it is, but I have a good friend who works there, and I get a little bit of inside baseball every once in a while of like, especially now with the very big transition that they did have to end up transitioning to using, Disguise and their own system, the amount of cost that kind of like, tsunami'd instead of just like from the beginning building something custom or even just using something that already exists. It's pretty crazy. And I think that, well, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me like that a lot of the internals were like you're saying, like, we don't need real time. Let's use this thing that's affordable, that does the thing that we need to do, even though it doesn't have alpha channels or like, can't do very specific things that are needed for this type of thing, but it does like, 444, so we'll be okay. But it's like such a small kind of like you're right, like we run the MSG, we know what people need. We need a high color bitrate content. That's all we need. But it's like, no, there's so much more that you're going to want to do with this kind of environment. So it's just very interesting to hear that you actually gave them that information, that they had it, but they maybe not ignored it, but decided to, circumvent it, or I don't know what the right word would be, but like didn't hear you.
Well, it's so interesting. I think like to be part of a corporate acquisition was a really like eye-opening experience, period. But I think the other piece of it was fascinating talking with other people that have been through similar kind of acquisitions, whether it's a Google or a Meta or a like you name it, that has like swallowed their company, is that there is this like weird energy in relationships between big organizations and smaller orgs, teams, companies, where when you're outside of the kind of like monolith, your voice has a different kind of impact, because this contractor who is an expert in this domain is actually like giving us this information that we've paid top dollar for, that is like shaping and steering the direction that we're going to go. But once you're inside the organism, there's a little bit of kind of like distrust about whether or not you actually have all the right information, or whether we should vet this against an outside resource. Have we done our due diligence to make sure that this is actually the right thing that we're going to do and that we're going to invest all this time and money in? And so in some ways, I think that, I think Obscura, I don't envy the decisions that anyone, right, in that kind of like leadership team are making. I think Obscura probably would have survived and thrived a little bit differently if we'd maintained more of that kind of professional exterior contractor guiding decisions versus being absorbed by the organization.
Of course. Yeah. Well, that's.
I think that's also true in like
probably
a
9
lot
times
of
out of 10. Yeah.
organizations, right?
Sure.
They absorb someone, and then the knowledge is somehow, it's just like not as shiny as when it was like outside.
It's also so counterintuitive. Like if I'm going to spend money and buy something, it's because I trust and love that thing. Why wouldn't I listen to it? But I think that, like you said, like, corporations and organizations, they're not always necessarily buying something because they love that thing. Maybe they're trying to swallow competition or trying to control the competition. Who knows what their, reasons or things are. Super fascinating. And thank you for that little bit of insight into there. Yeah. Was there anything else you want to share about that?
The last like little like
Please.
tale I would share there is, I think one of the really interesting things that happened for me, and like I think probably the transition happened for me at the wrong time in life, was that I suddenly found myself in this role as director where I really couldn't write code anymore. Like that wasn't the function of my role, right? So it was like I wasn't going to write any of the like infrastructure pieces. I wasn't going to work on servers anymore. I wasn't going to build interfaces or build solutions. I was really going to like hire direct teams and then write a lot of these like spirit documents that kind of like steered us as an organization. Yeah. And then like, right, like that puts you in the trajectory and the kind of like orbits, I guess that's the right word, that puts you in is just like a lot more of the kind of navigating of personality and kind of like
admin
goal, the different. Yeah, it's like it's a really different space, and
Totally.
I really valued the ability to have a direct impact and directly contribute to what we were working on and doing. And I didn't feel like that was I didn't feel like I could do that anymore. And so that was part of why ultimately I left, was like I wasn't ready to put down my keyboard and mouse yet. I wasn't ready to stop building tools and stop making things, because it was like that's still the part that's really gratifying and interesting and fun. Is like you're like, oh, like I wrote the code that puts that pixel there and makes it blink that color. Like I did that. Instead of like, oh yeah, I organized the meeting and hired the team that talked about the thing that, got built the stakeholders you know, enthusiasm about why we needed to do the thing that finally got made. It's like, I don't know, that isn't as wasn't as like rewarding and fulfilling for me. And so yeah, that was part of my kind of like transition.
I think that speaks volumes to you as a person, not to stroke your ego too much, but like that just shows that kind of where your focus and mindset is of kind of like, I made that thing, not like I organized or orchestrated this whole thing, which I think, and this is not to knock on anybody, but I think that some people with maybe a more, not necessarily inflated, but a different type of focus on their ego would want that instead of the other thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
totally,
some people like
totally.
to screw the screw, and some people like to stand over the guy screwing the screw and being like, no, screw it tighter or do it like that. And that's not a great example because that's like kind of like bullshit. But I think in our world, both are really important, right? The art director is very important and the designer is very important. It's when the art director starts like standing over the person and saying screw in the screw that it becomes a little bit,
Yeah.
do we need this guy really? Or when
Right.
the designer is kind of like making all these decisions without asking to do it and wasting time. There's like these lines.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
speaks about you as a person, where your focus is lying, and I think that takes us into SudoMagic and the company that you started, where I'd love to hear more about what you're doing and transition into Signals and get into your set.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we started, it's like so weird. So, Ian and I did a graduate, Ian did the same graduate program I did at ASU, but his first year was my third year. So we were like in a kind of like train, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tried for, I don't know, almost as long as I was at Obscura to get us to hire Ian. And he went to another studio, worked at Bridge for a little bit, and then ultimately like did a bunch of freelance work and did one of the things that he talks about that's like a wild story is working on the Simon Says game that was played on the Empire State Building. He's the
Oh, wow.
engineer that built the mechanics for that, both the front
That's
end and
crazy.
back end parts, which is like bananas. Like what a wild story. And then Zoe, our other collaborator, the three of us met at a art festival out of ASU. My last year, Ian's first year. And at the time, Zoe was a project manager for a arts theater research organization out of UCLA. And so we kind of all collided at this festival. And then subsequently, like, I stayed in contact with Ian, of course. And then Zoe and I started, they tried to pull me into a job at UCLA to work on a show. And then I got hired at Obscura, and I was like, wasn't going to work out. But we stayed in contact. Full disclosure, I'm married to this lovely human being, and I love them very much. And so
to
Zoe.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. And so, our relationship also overlapped with, it was like, it's like really funny sometimes because people are like, we'll work on jobs for, 6 months, 8 months. And then someone will be like, wait, you two are married? And we're like, oh yeah, we're married. And they're like, I don't know that. And so we had talked about, Zoe did a graduate program in game design and interactive spaces. And we realized that at this kind of like 2019, 2017, the three of us started talking about like, what would it be if we had a company? Because we had like all the ingredients we needed between front end, back end, kind of like big system architecture, cloud infrastructure architecture, project management, design, user interaction, user experience, or like, okay, like we have all the ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
So what would it be if we had a studio? And we kind of like played with the idea. We talked about different names. We kicked it around. And it was right at the end of when I was working at MSG. I got an email from a company in the Northeast that was TellArt. They've since broken into two different companies, but at the time, TellArt. And they were looking at doing an installation, and they were like, we've got some budget for it when it was a very like reasonable, healthy bit of budget. And they're like, but we don't really have the technical team to kind of pull this off. And it was just big enough that I was like, this is more than one developer could do. Um, and it was really that moment that all of a sudden the three of us were like, all right, we've got to like, we need to found a company, we run a space, we need to like get all of our documents together. And within like 2 months, we'd managed to like found the company, get everything set up, and we were like off to the races to work on this job. And that suddenly turned into like another job, and then there was another job, and suddenly we're like, oh wow, we're like, this isn't just like a one-off. We're like really a little like boutique studio. Like, how did that happen? Like, wild. And we've done all sorts of things, right? We've done like small little experiences, one-off experiences that are events, and we've built visualization tools for folks that are doing virtual production. We've done virtual production shoots. We've done just standalone kind of like web app kind of infrastructure pieces. And then we've done like, most recently we're working with a client in Macau, working on like some big video installation pieces there. So it's been one of those things where you're like, I don't know how this is all happening, but here we are. And we're like, still making, pushing pixels.
Hell yeah.
Pushing buttons, pushing pixels.
Seems like you're striving as well. Not only just pushing, but also striving.
Well, we're certainly trying. We're like, I think constantly in the space of trying to answer the question of like, what is it that we want to do? Are we excited about what we're doing? There are certainly jobs that maybe aren't necessarily as fulfilling to work on, but pay the bills.
That's the name of the game.
And that's like, all of us, I think, end up doing that from time to time.
Of course.
So it's been really interesting. I think it's been a really interesting also to have like come through the Obscura Digital and MSG experience, and then to be in this position now with two other people who are remarkable and wonderful and really a joy to work with. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I had the opportunity to like learn a lot of the things that I didn't want us to do in the other places that I worked. And, I think all of us kind of bring with us different degrees of risk and balance. And we have a very nice kind of like counterweighting system, I think, between the three of us.
That's really important to have in a company. So sorry, just a quick sidebar before we go into Signals. Did you ever freelance, or you always kind of either worked for a company or had your own company?
I guess I did kind of like tiny freelance, because I did teach all the teaching work I was doing while I was at Obscura was all freelance work.
Gotcha.
And then I did a couple like under the radar gigs when I was at Obscura. There was like kind of an unwritten rule. Yeah, you weren't really supposed to do it, but like no one was gonna like. Yeah. That we kind of understood that we didn't quite have a market rate for our developers for a long time at Obscura. So like, as long as you got your work done and like no gigs caught on fire. It was like,
right. You're not making us look bad somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And the other kind of like interesting piece there was also like, I remember talking with my director several times about teaching workshops and stuff, and they were like, honestly, like teaching a workshop helps builds our credibility as an organization. So we would rather that you do that than don't do that.
Totally.
Let's just
make
sure that
totally it makes Obscura look better, right? That they're hiring these cool people. For sure. All right, so we're gonna now check out Matthew's set. He has a very interesting thing to show us here called SudoSignals, and I'm gonna let him explain all about it. And take it away, Matthew.
Oh man, this is so wild. So Signals starts from this idea, and this is where I'm gonna ask you questions also, and I'm like curious about your experience, because I know that you're kind of like, you're as deep in this like automation. I have other things that are out in the world, and how do I control them and set them up and like reliably know that I can like faithfully see them working, like rabbit hole, as I think any of us are. And so I'm curious, like if you've encountered some of these same challenges. So like one of the problems we had at Obscura that I have never found a good solution for is the the process watcher that I know is going to start up the thing that I want it to start, and is going to make sure that it keeps running. And I know there's like a bunch of ways to do that these days. But like the fundamental thing that we've like thought about for Signals is like, I want to know that I can start TouchDesigner, and if it crashes, or if the machine restarts, or if it gets, you know, someone unplugs it and plugs it back in, that like when the things come back online, that my project's going to start back up.
Right. I love
And like
that.
that's like one bucket
Yes.
is like,
how much does it cost? Sign me up. Yes.
well, so that's like
You know,
one
like,
bucket, right? And like I don't
I have
know.
like a super simple script. Sorry, I have a super simple script, like, you know, just a very basic. I don't even know what is called, like, command. I guess command line, like, you know, listener, and then I have like a button that anybody can just press, and it launches TouchDesigner. But it's dumb, you know. It doesn't feedback. It doesn't tell me if it's off or on, or certainly doesn't tell me if the guy who doesn't know how to use it presses it twice and loads 2 projects.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah, 100%.
which
I
has
didn't
happened
load
multiple
fast
times.
enough. I'm gonna
It's
do
like,
it again.
yeah,
I'm gonna do it until one launches.
calls me like, oh, it's not working well. It's not working well. Okay, I'll come into it. I come into it, spend 20 minutes like looking at everything. Everything's working fine. Oh wait, Alt Tab. Oh, there's 2 instances open.
Oh, there's a lot.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. All right. All right. Okay, so then next big question. So are you do you use environment variables in your startup script? Is that like part of your workflow these days?
I not really. I have like some things that will tell me like, is GPU affinity working? Is you know, when I launch my control project, it launches the actual project. But very dumb again, you know, some have feedback. Like, I know if my main project is loaded just based on a UI button. You know, nothing like environment variables. No, very like kind of piece together things.
So for people that are like new-ish to this space, or like are finding themselves confronting some of this problem, so like the interesting piece about launching TouchDesigner from the command line is that you can set environment variables, and then those are immediately accessible inside of Touch, which is like took me an age to get to that point. So like if you wanted to do something like, so for like example, sometimes we often use the same TOE file, but the same TOE file gets loaded as a controller or as a display, because we tend to work in this environment where we try to develop all the code in a single project and then configure it at start, right? That's like a way that we like to work. Because then otherwise it gets really complicated when you're like, well, this TOE file is for this thing, and this TOE file is for this other thing, and this TOE file does this other thing, and then you like make a change in one of them, but then it breaks all of them. And so instead we use this idea that like we'll set a role when we start up, and then we capture that in TouchDesigner. And so one of the really interesting things about Touch is that you can actually use me.var to grab an environment variable that's been set when you launch, if you run it from a script.
So okay, so I do run like I force GPUs, right? Because we have multiple GPUs in the system, so I force GPUs to do GPU affinity. You're saying that if I force an environment variable, I can actually see what I forced in Touch?
Yeah. Here. So this will be the fun part of where we'll start off this like adventure. So, right, like this is a super simple example. This is like not particularly like wild or sexy yet. So I've got some TOE file here, right? And the ingredients of this script are like, I have the name of the TOE file I'm going to start. I have the version of TouchDesigner that I want to use, and then I've got a path to where I'm going to find that executable. So when we run this like little CMD, right? When we run this little batch script, it's going to launch Touch. And it'll launch it, and it will set this environment variable for me. And that's like, we'll see in a second why that's cool, as we like let Touch like warm up and get cooking here. At any moment, I'm sure there'll be like some extra fan noise that will appear in my background audio as well. It's like a part of this. This is like so funny because this is like so much of Signals is not particularly like really like visually stunning. It is like all of the ingredients that I wish I'd had to feel successful for like running an organization or running a company or those kinds of things. So I apologize for folks who are like, I want sick visuals, and I'm like, check out this weird cool code thing.
No, our the audience is definitely split. People like both, so you're in a safe place.
Okay.
Show us your
there are
geeky
some
stuff,
cool
please.
visuals in some of this, and then like we'll see hopefully why that's cool, right? So
Okay.
like anyway. So this little expression right here, right? Me.var td role is exactly this environment variable here. So if I were to do display, save this script, and run it again, right? When I start at this second instance, that second instance is going to have display as an environment variable instead. So like places where this gets like super useful is, and let me just home the network here. Like, sure, cool, it's great that you can do this for things like your configuration, but if you're like just starting out and you're like, I don't totally see why this would matter to me. Imagine that you have like 4 projectors connected and you never know which one might be in which order, and you want a quick way to be able to start up that project and be like, go to this output, right? So you could think about setting your display index here as well as a way to like point your project to like where you're supposed to actually live, or any number of things, right? Like this could also be like, what's the WebSocket port that you've got to listen to, or what's the OSD address for the controller, or like any of those things where I want to know that when someone, clicks the button to run this like little, dumb little script, right? Like that's actually, I don't have to ask them to like change any other things. I don't have to change anything in the TOE file. Like it's just bam, right there, done.
Interesting. Yeah, in the past, the way that I would know what project I'm in, I would look at the IP and then tie the IP to like, is this the node or is this the master? But this is, I didn't know you could do that through environment variables to know which one it is. It's so cool.
So that's like useful. A super, this is like, so if you only walk away with that today, like hold on to this. It's like a really interesting way to think about how you can do this. It also means that like, right, you could take this. So ways that we use this technique would be like, we'd have some other big JSON file, right? That might have like, display 01 is going to be a key that looks into another big map that helps me understand all of the other stuff that I might need to know about this machine and how to configure it, because display 01, display 02, display 03, and then like where that gets cool for your backups is like you no longer have to know the IP address of the backup. You can just be like, hey, your
backup
display 02, right? And you could also say like, right, you could give yourself another like environment variable backup, right, is true or false, or you might do like primary, right? And then you have a way to be like, oh, okay, like here, this one is like the primary, and then I have another machine that's set up already, and it's the backup, and it's ready to go. So, this is cool. Like cool. It's like, not particularly like wild. If you're like in the command line, this is like all right. And I think that the thing that like really matters to us is also this bit here, where it's like, what's the version of TouchDesigner that I'm starting this project with? Because I don't know if you've run into this yet, but like we invariably, when we're working on a project, before we upgrade versions of Touch, we'll try to, like, we have some project out in the wild, we'll test it to be like, okay, like what's going to break in 1200 versus what's in 11800. And so we have to have multiple versions installed, and then we have to have an easy way to be like, I'm going to start this with the new version, I'm going to start it with the old version. Or there's like some project that's out in the wild that's like never updated, and like it has always got to start with like that version from 22. And like we don't
Are you
really
fam-
have a good hit
Are you
me.
familiar with the TD launcher?
Yeah, Isaac's TD launcher, which is
Yeah,
super
yeah.
cool. Um,
But it's not going to be cross-platform. You have to install it for sure. But at home, like on my computer, I just use that.
mhm.
But being able to force it through this command is obviously very important for sure.
Yeah, and it's like I like we don't have a good launcher that's gonna do because I'm selfish, right? I'm like grouchy. I'm like, I want it to do all the things. I want to be able to set my
Right.
environment variables. I want to be able to set I want to know that I can set affinity right. I want to know which version of touch that it is. Um, and like, I don't want to write the script to do that every time. It's like, I mean, not that you can't, like, you could certainly do that, but like, that's not what I want to do.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's the preamble for where Signals
Another
starts.
question.
Yeah. Hit
Another
me.
question. So I have this problem, and I'm definitely doing it wrong. But like when I version up or down, well, not down. When I version up, and I'm very anal about versions. Like if I have like in my mind like what is a new version, and
Hmm.
obviously I'm a one-person team, so it's not as critical. But like whenever I change the version and I put that new file into the right folder that's looking at, I now have to change the version number on my automation, on my environment variable or on my scripts or whatever. I know that probably the smartest thing to do is just to give it the name, like the same name every time. But sometimes that makes me nervous that like I'm gonna forget what version it is that I'm loading before I load it. So I want to like have the number there. In that like command script line, is there a way to just be like, because you can just like look at a file name and just remove the last two digits or whatever. Um,
Totally. You could do that. The trick that we use these days, and we use this for web deployment tricks, is that
mhm,
whenever we save a new version, we version the file name,
mhm,
right? Like, so we have like a 1.1.2. Um,
mhm.
but we'll also overwrite whatever it is going to start to be just the thing that's we're going to
Mhm.
launch, right? Or we'll do something like this. We'll call it like latest. So then it's like
Latest.
we have a latest that we know is
Right.
like that's the thing, and then
Right.
every time we save we have like a new version, we'll like freeze a
You'll
version with
have
the
it
number that
there,
we have it, we know
but
it's
you'll
there,
right.
and we also know that latest is always latest.
Gotcha.
And that's like a
Yeah, I
good
figure
trick that a
that
lot of like web
makes
dev
more sense.
uses.
Interesting. Because then you have both of them basically. You have like double file. You have one that's just like what's launching, and one's like just there to give you like some sort of. That's the thing that was kind of scary to me, to not have the visual thing. But
Yeah,
obviously, it makes so much sense to just have it there, but just have the project that's loading as the thing. Okay, easy, done.
right, that one's like whew, done, put it in your back pocket, call it a day, go to the bank with that one.
Done.
All right. So signals like so part of what signals like tries to solve is some of this like starting equation, right? And the caveats I'll offer are that right now we have like a command prompt that starts up. This is like our little internal housekeeping bit. We're like very much in beta, so I fully expect
hmm
something will break. Hopefully it's not too embarrassing for me to show off here. Um, but like the
Oh
idea
wow,
is that there's a
nice.
service that runs, right? Like this runs, you don't see it. We only see it right now because it's how I know that it's going to like actually not, it's actually behaving. And this service gives us, there's a front end here, right? That gives us all the handles for how we build a profile. And a
Wow.
profile then becomes a collection of processes. And then the processes are all the things that I could configure, right? So we can make a simple one, right? Like visual cast. And this profile then, right? Like now I want to like make a process. I'm going to configure this process, my TD process. I want to do the thing where like I'm going to pick a file. Like I want to open this file. I want to know which version of TouchDesigner I'm going to get from it. So like we do like a registry search for you. So we'll tell you
hmm
everything that we know that's installed on the
Nice.
machine that'll open that file for you. And then you can pick, is it always going to restart? Is it only going to restart 4 times? Like what is its behavior?
Huh.
Because like maybe what I want to do is I want to launch it, and when someone closes it, that's it, it's off.
Right.
Maybe I don't want it, like maybe there's a bug and like if it infinitely restarts, that's a problem. So like please only like try to restart 10 times and then like cut it out.
Wow.
Or, you know, always try to keep yourself running, right?
I love that.
And then there's a set of advanced options. So like I might want to pick a working directory for the file. Like I want to know that this is, you know, starting in a particular directory. Or, right, like we saw before, like I want to add some environment variables, and you can add, you know, as many of these as you want. We don't care how many of these you make. Right. So then I save the changes for that. I have my profile here, and then I can actually ask Signals to start that profile up. And this has got like a little like helper card here, so we can see that like Signals understands that like I started that process. I don't know, like I don't have any talk back from it, but I know that I started it, and you can get a little like counter here for okay, yeah,
Ooh,
like,
visuals.
I know there are some visuals, yeah, killer. Right, and like,
dude, this is amazing. Like, have you shown this? Like, has this been? Are you? I know it's not released, but this is like amazing.
It's pretty cool. Thank you.
It's
We have a
fucking
version
awesome.
1 out in the world that's like a little different than this, and we'll see. Like, this is cool. Hopefully, like you feel that like the next pieces that we'll look at will feel like a little cooler still.
It's just like it's what you want from a launcher. You know, it's what you want from like, especially a launcher for TouchDesigner, where TouchDesigner is so dense in what you can launch and how you can launch things. And like you said, the environment variables for like logic and automation. This is like beautiful, pretty, easy to use. I'm sure you're going to get more and more talkbacks as we go on. Like, it's so great. Really, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. So like other examples here, right? So like if only there was a world where we only had to do launch TouchDesigner, like we'll launch just about any application you ask. So like
Hell
we could
yeah.
launch.
I don't
like
want to
there's an
hear about
example
anything else. Sorry. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Well, what you might care about though, right, is you might have a set where
joking.
you're like, well, actually, I need to launch Ableton and I need to launch TouchDesigner.
Right.
Right. Because like that's not uncommon in our world. Is like I need to do both of those.
Totally.
And I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I found this bug last night. I think Ableton's going to bark at me because I quit it. So this is something that we're trying to track down, right? But like, part of what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to build out the profile for what I know is going to be like a consistent set of things that I'm going to do for a gig or for an installation. And I want to know that I can start both of those up. And like, yeah, I know. I'm going to fix you. But I want that to be something that I can just like, boom, hit from one button and not have to like write a script to do it every time. And I think that's part of like, you know, this never gets old to me. It's so fun to be like, oh, I've already made all the decisions about what that is. Right. And now I'm just like telling you to start up. So that's like the first part of Signals. And I would say like the direction that Signals is heading right now is like this whole idea, right? There's a project launcher. There's a way to build profiles. There's a way to configure your profiles. All of that stuff. The other piece here that we've been working on recently is that the other bit that I want to be able to do is I want to know that I could start like a Node project or I could start a Python script and have that run in the background as well. Okay. Right? Because I think more and more we're seeing people use like Stream Diffusion or other like AI tools where like I really need a consistent way to be able to start that up that isn't like, I'm going to launch TouchDesigner and then TouchDesigner is going to launch the other thing. And then what if TouchDesigner crashes and now I have this orphaned process that I can't control anymore, right? So like I want to know that there's a kind of single place that I can kind of like turn that on and off. Right.
Or at least see it, that it's running or not.
Exactly. So there's like the other bit that we've been working on is being able to launch those other types of services. So you've got like a WebSocket that's running, or you've got an OSC like relay that's running, or any of those things that, you know, aren't necessarily like...
Launch the service, you mean outside of TouchDesigner?
Exactly, right? Because I want to be able to like add in here like we see not
Run a bat.
infrequently someone has like a web service they run that's like at the front end, that's like all the interface for their project.
Mm-hmm.
And so like they keep all the front end code out of touch. It's like in a browser, but how do you know
Mm-hmm.
reliably that you're going to start that up and you're going to like, I need to start that up first and then start TouchDesigner, or actually wait, hold on, I want to start TouchDesigner and then I want to start the other one.
And
Like,
then, right. Like
all
almost
those
like
order of
a
operations things that are like
order of
that matter.
operations. Yeah. Yeah, it matter. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting. Love it. And what
So-
about
Mhm.
just another one? What about multi computers, like multiple systems? If I want to launch,
yeah.
because that's always like the most annoying thing. Like I said before, like make that script to listen for another computer, launching for another computer. You know, it's like it's also one of those things that you search online of like, how do I launch a program from another computer? And there's like 50 different ways to do it, and like everybody's
Yeah.
like, no, this is the best way. No, this is the best way.
Yeah.
You're like,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I don't know.
Hold on
ChatGPT,
to
help
your-
me.
Yeah. Hold on to your butts, man. So I guess like the last thing to say here is like this part of Signals, we're pretty committed to keeping like totally free. Like,
Amazing.
don't pay me for this part. Like this part is something that should just be easy to do anyway. And it's like really
Right.
deeply frustrating that it's not easy to do. And so we'd rather that people have a kind of like easy way to build these kinds of profiles, know that they can start, you know, whether it's Touch or whether it's, you know, Unreal or
Ableton.
Unity or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like we want to build better tools for doing some of the work that we know is already really hard. And
Wait,
that's
Matthew,
just,
before
like-
you move on, just because now my mind's rolling. So like in Unreal, if I would launch Unreal or even Pixar or something like that, do those have the same type of environment variables that would like allow me to do something like that? Is that
It
a normal
depends on the
does that question
application.
make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can definitely pick up environment variables from Unity, from Unreal, from Python, from Node, and then
Like
different
environment variables in
applications.
Unreal, would that just be like if I right click on the UE project and look at like that's the environment variables?
I think
Like if I right click on a UE project and open it in text in a text editor, it gives me like the plugins that are loaded and the version and stuff like that.
I haven't done this in a minute, but I know that there's a way to set that from the command line, right? Because the other thing
Interesting.
that shows up here, and this part isn't working in this version. I have another version where this shows up, is that I want to be able to not only do this bit, but I also want to know that let's take a look at this one. I think I can make a change here, right? Like I want to be able to edit the actual script that runs as well, right? Because I want to do something like -r this file.txt, right? Or
Right.
any of the kind of like command line arguments that I pass in. Like, sure, I want to set environment
Will work.
variables, but I also want to be able to like set all of the command line, you know.
Right. Or even the affinity, like you were saying before, is going to be here as well.
Exactly. And I want to, I want to be able to set all of this up and then know that it's going to work and like not think about
It would also be, what would be really cool is while you set that environment variable, like, can you go back to it for 1 second?
Yeah.
Just like a UI thing, like maybe the argument is on a separate thing, and then the argument can be changed from a drop-down menu, or like something in the actual outside of the configure process. So like if I have two variables, I can just easily switch between them for those two things. You know what I'm saying? Instead of having to go and change the whole line.
You are going to be, let's see if I can find the like screenshot of where this is going, because that's exactly kind of what we've imagined, is that same with the go, find it. Same kind of idea for what you set for, there you are. All right, let me just like scooch in here. Don't give away too many secrets. Right, that's always the fun
So
thing.
exciting.
So right, just like the same way that we do those environment variables, like I just want to add another command line argument and then dump it right in here.
Right.
So there's a big list of
Yes,
them.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
And then the idea being that like,
Yeah.
as you fill this out, your preview shows up with the command that's going to run. Because the other thing I want to be able to do is I want to be able to copy paste this, run it in the command line, and see that it works the way that I expect
Right,
it
the
to
way
work.
that
I want to be able to test it.
Right, like almost like a ground truth. Like, okay, Signals is great, but maybe it's doing something funky. How can I just test that it's working? I love that. That's super important. See, you have this like, you know what people want, like the developer mind wants, and it's like it's the beautiful synergy of like what the developer wants versus what the end user needs, right? Of like, I need a simple UI, but I want to have control over everything.
Right.
And like that synergy is like so important that I feel like so many side apps or like, you know, UIs don't take into account. They're either for the end user or they're for the developers, and then it's like it gets lost.
Yeah, 100%. Right. The other like magic of Signals is like everything that we describe in one of these config files rather, is really just JSON. So if you wanted to like automate that, you want to write a script that's going to like build your config files for you, like we don't care. That's absolutely something you can do. We also wanted to make sure there was something that so like the person that's out on site, you know, commissioning that machine has an easy way to kind of step through all the things they're supposed to do and doesn't need to like edit a JSON file and put it in a special directory and, you know, do all that stuff, right? So that's like, you know, that's Signals in a nutshell is like, sorry, I need a little bit of like, it's like too bright on my screen. That's like the kind of dime tour of just the local app and what the local app does, right? Because like that's, you know, at the end of the day, I want something like smooth, simple, and like I want the confidence of like deploying the thing at the conference that like means that I've set it all up. I don't have to write any scripts and like we're off to the races. I think where Signals gets more interesting, and to your question before about like, okay, what happens when I have many machines, is the problem that we run into not infrequently is it's great that I've got this all up and running on this machine, but then how do I get to it from anywhere else? And so the companion to the local app is a web dashboard. So this is, you know, out on the World Wide Web. That's great. And what we've tried to think about is like, how do we make this as easy as we can to like add machines to? So we have a kind of a nesting doll kind of idea here, right? So like a machine is a collection of processes, and I'm going to connect a machine here, right? Like a lot of this is super similar to how we connect devices already. There's like a simple authentication code. You can give it a name. I'll call it Viv.
There we go. Hell yeah.
And so there we go. There's my machine. Right? Like the other magic of this is, let's say, so I've got the service is running over here, right? So I'm going to kill the service and my machine went offline.
Nice.
So it's not running. The service is going to turn back on. It'll phone back up to the cloud and Signals is running.
Gotcha.
And we'll see here, right? We've got these like little process counts to know as we come online, whether or not we're talking here. And this is like, there's like so many layers of this that are exciting to me, just because like these are problems that I have like fought with in so many different ways. Right? Because like the other thing that I want to be able to do is I want to be able to change like which one of those profiles is running.
Right. Wow.
I don't want to log into the machine to do that. And then like in that nesting doll universe, I also want to see some of the things that are happening for that machine.
Let's go.
Right? Because I want some metrics about like what's happening here, like what's behaving, not behaving. I can't tell you the number of times like I want to know a driver version and like getting to that's on a box that's like in a room that
my god.
I need to know that. I need to know the MAC addresses for what's going on.
This is like real
The number of
pornography right
times.
now, dude. This is like some. This is seriously not safe for work. Okay.
Right? Are you like? It's silly, but like
It's so important.
you move enough boxes,
Yeah.
and it's like memory gets loose, a
KVM
drive
back
gets
and forth,
loose.
right click, left click, KVM back to the
Right.
other machine, right click, left click. 10 minutes later,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
get the information that you should be able to just get by just looking at something simple.
Right, that you want to see right away.
Totally.
So this is like, right, like this is swell. I would say like where this gets like more fun is, we can start any process you want. We can stop anything that you want. That's, easy peasy. Where it gets really interesting in my mind is we really doubled down on the idea that you should be able to author a plugin for whatever you're working on. And for TouchDesigner, we've written that already. That looks like, just a talks that you drop into your network. The talks will, talk to your dashboard right away. We'll see that there's like a bunch of controls that showed up.
Huh.
Wow. And the like magic there in my mind is that we wanted to think about like anything that you build as a custom parameter, we will faithfully recreate for you as a control in the
web GUI
on the web.
Wow.
So here, right, like
That's
there's
lovely.
a little place I want to like, this is where my custom controls go. I want to drop that in. On a refresh cycle, we should see, oh, I see that trails showed up over here, right? So like, ooh, good. That's another little squirrely bug. But we can see that these same controls from over here are now, have shown up.
That is
which means that
fantastic.
like to me, right, the other like bananas thing here is like this is all bi-directional. So like I change it in the web and it shows up here, or I could change it locally and that'll push back to the web. So like,
my goodness.
I want that to go kind of both ways, right? Like I'm like a, I need that in both places. And right, like if the thing then is like gives me the tingles are the ways that shifts really quickly, because I've just so frequently been in this scenario where like there's the client that's standing behind you and they're like, okay, they like watch you in TouchDesigner and they understand how fast that goes.
Right. And they're expecting
and
that.
They're like, that is so fast. Why is it so slow to get it over here? Like, okay, fair question. So like, what if, right? So like on our trails here, like I want another palette. Like I need another color palette here, right? Like that should be as easy as I'm going to head into here and I'm going to like make another color palette. I'm going to plug that into my switch. Okay, great. I'm going to change the colors. We need something spoopy because it's Halloween, right? Like, excellent. Like that's easy for me to do here, but like it should also be easy enough that if I go to customize this and I want to add my, Halloween palette, like that should show up. And like why that's got to be so hard is like it shouldn't be.
Nice.
That should be like I can make that change and it shows up, right?
Sick.
Like it should be that like I want to I think about this and maybe I don't want in this one, right? Like this ramp, actually what I want to do is I'm going to run this through a constant. I'm going to change this so that it's just black and white, because at the end of the day, like I want to drive this color from this constant instead. Okay, great. And like, I'm going to grab this and let's like, set the reference. And okay, great. Like I should be able to absolutely just like have that. Like that should not be hard.
An auto updating web GUI is already like enough to be excited about this whole thing. Like,
so that's like,
dude, like, oh my God, so many things. Just updating like the web GUI in general, like if you're using WebSockets, it's time consuming.
It's a pain.
It's a pain in the
Oh
ass.
my God, it's so
and you
frustrating.
have to think about the variable and the message and the thing, and depending what server you're using, it's like it's very hard to automate. It's easy to like set up once you've set it up, but then to like what you just showed right now, having that is so nice. That's a really powerful feature.
So the other thing that would be fun here, so you'll see that my process doesn't show up. This is a bug that we've spent the past 3 weeks fixing. So the version where that's working the way that it's supposed to isn't quite ready yet, but we can switch around. If we start another process, we should see these come online here.
So you can switch.
Because there's some other fun things that then show up and then like get really, give me the tingles to think about, right? So this is that same like controller display, 2 different TouchDesigner processes that are running. Both of these already have the plugin in them, which is great. The other kind of like magic here is that these have 2 different sets of controls, and we'll see that each one of these processes only has the controls that belong to them. The other super fun thing that we've kind of held on to is that any process should be allowed to also have its own custom reports. Oh no, where'd you go, friend? Well, maybe you'll come back at some point. Shucks. Let me give it a refresh and see if it'll show up here. Because the idea of reports here is like super exciting to us. And it's not working because that's like, how it goes sometimes. All right. Well, maybe that'll come back before we're done. The TLDR though is that your any process can also share time series data. So just like we have graphs that come from the machine, your process also has graphs that it can share about what's happening or not happening.
Like chop data and variable, like stuff like that, like
anything you can put in a table.
Anything you can put in a table.
And let's see if there's. I don't know if I did it in sick visuals. Let's see if it's there.
Right a second ago, you were showing that that the difference between the display and the control had different controls. Is that just in the project? You're just telling it if I'm control, then show this, and then if I'm display, show this.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
But that's any custom controls, right? So like
totally, that's not part of the plugin, right? That's just like normal TouchDesigner stuff. Okay.
That's just like normal TouchDesigner, right? That's back here. If we start this one up, so this one uses the same TOE file for both of these. It's just like one's got the controller and one's got the display. But we'll see when we peek inside that the way that that's broken up is that one of these has a set of custom parameters that's for a controller. Right, so here's my controller and here's my display, and I'm also just like using a little switch to say, okay, which one of those do I grab?
Right, gotcha. Okay, gotcha, got it. That makes sense. Cool.
But that could be also like, if you had had 2 totally different TOE files, you might have 2 totally different sets of controls inside them.
Right, and that would also come in the same. It would be the same thing.
Same thing, right? The other thing that like I want a process to be able to do, and this is in the plugin here, is I want it to be able to send logs.
Yes.
So like, right, I want to be able to capture information about what happens, then I want to like, let's see, run this. I want to get a log. Like we have this idea of there's a log, there's a info, there's a warning. There's a critical message, and then there's an alert message, right?
I love that.
So you get all of those because the like other secret ingredient in here is like, I want to be able to sign up for alerts from the machine. So I want to know, like, I want to get an email or a text.
Wow. This is
if the process goes offline, if the machine goes offline, maybe I only care about one of those machines. So only like text me if the controller goes offline, but I don't care about the display.
Yeah.
And this log alerts is special because this alert type for message would also be something that would show up to you as an email or as a text.
Wow. It's so cool. And you're gonna collect everybody's data and sell it, right? Of course.
Oh,
I'm just joking.
that feels really gross.
I'm sorry. I'm
Um,
sorry. I'm just joking.
I know.
No,
I
but you
think
guys
about it. I'm
you
like,
thought of
oh no, we
everything.
can't do that.
You really thought of everything. This is super stupendous. Is this going to be a service?
This is going to be a service. It's like, this is cool, but there's more layers to this onion, which are just that, like, it would be great if it was just a machine, but like the world that we live in, right, is um, like we really live in a world that's where there are installations, and installations are a collection of machines. And so I should be able to take these machines, right, and then collect them into a single installation. And so now I really have like an installation that is all of these machines.
Wow.
Because, right, like at the end of the day, the other thing I want to be able to do is I want to be able to turn off the whole installation with one button, so that that's, you know, all the processes on all the machines. Or I want to be able to start up everybody at the same time. And in fact, I can turn on here. I'll start up the other machine, and so we'll see it come online here.
So for me to connect a machine that's not this machine, all I have to do is run the sudo app, and then it picks it up. Is that really just all it is?
It's just that. That's really just that, like,
no, like
6-digit code.
No, it's running on, but it's running through the internet, or it's running locally.
This one's running through the internet.
So then you don't have to worry about ports or IPs or anything like that. It's really just if you have internet access, you're good.
Yeah.
And what if I don't have internet access?
Yeah, so like we've been working on another version of this for enterprise clients that have a closed network where it's like it's got to be, you know, locked down.
Yeah.
And so that's coming. We've focused on the internet version first because we so frequently encounter clients who are like, this is great. How do I do it from my phone?
Right.
And then the hoops of like,
of course.
Okay, well, we need to set up a web service. And after we set up the web service, we need a front end. And after we have a front end, we need to authenticate. Like, we were like, let's start there, because getting to just on-prem is like,
it's easier,
way less complicated than starting with like, it's got to live on the whole internet.
Totally. Interesting.
The last thing to show you here, just so that, you know, because if only we lived in a world where like I have an installation and like I trusted everyone to only touch the buttons they're supposed to. The other thing we've held on to is like this notion that you should be able to promote controls.
Oh,
so
that's nice.
From our controller, maybe like the only thing that my producer is allowed to touch is really these 4 things.
None of them.
And I'm going to roll that up here to the installation. And then these are the only things that you actually get to interact with.
Gotcha. And you can like set permissions for certain users kind of thing, like elevate permissions, something like that.
Right. Because then there's one other layer to this onion, right? Which is like, there's an installation, but like that installation can belong to a team.
Right. Oh,
so like
so nice.
I've got another user here, and I'm shared already. So if we looked at the account page, we could see that like here in team members, right, you could like invite someone to another team, which is excellent. And like my role so far here, if I go back real fast, right, is only viewer. And so as a viewer here, if I go take a look at my team, right, I only get to see the installation. So I don't have permission to actually see the machine resources.
Right.
I only get the installations, and in looking at the installations, I can't even drill down into the machines.
Nice.
I only get to see and control the things that have been promoted.
Nice.
So we have that kind of granularity so that you could actually, right, you could onboard a client and give them this part of the dashboard and be like, great, you're just a viewer. All you get to do are, you know, change these things that we've decided that have made their way up.
Amazing.
Ooh. All right. There's the like big, crazy, like overview, high level perspective. I think the other fun thing, right, is these like little like person bubbles are also things that we've thought about. So you can actually see like who's logged in,
Yeah.
who's looking at which page, so that you have some confidence that
This is
the
really
person that's
great.
actually taking a look at that
I,
is there.
if you would have just shown me the app without this whole web interface, I would have been like, this is amazing. But this whole web interface is really, this is like, this is not a plugin. This is a product. This is great.
That's like the kind of like direction that we've moved, is we've really tried to think about like, I don't, as much fun as this is to build, I don't know that I need to build like a special Snowflake version of this for every client.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And probably like the other reality that we've encountered there is that like not every client is prepared for the kind of like budget implications of what it is to build this kind of like dashboard.
Totally.
Right. 'Cause
Totally.
it's like, it's not a small effort. It's, there's a lot of moving pieces. And if we can offer, so for our own clients, it's like, great. Like, we can package this as,
Branded or whatever.
in the kind of like service. Yeah. Like we can white label up, brand it for you, put it inside like your domain, like great, easy peasy. Or we can just say like, if you don't think that you actually need this, you can just use the subscription part of this. Because the model that we're using right now is that it's a machine seat idea.
Okay.
So like you only need to purchase as many licenses as you have machines that are running for your installations.
Nice. Do you have any info on that or not yet?
We're still trying to figure out what that pricing is totally going to look like. I think one of the pieces that we want to do is we want to run a machine, all day, every day for a week, once all of the moving pieces have stabilized. So we really understand
See
what the database read write is.
Right.
To make sure that we're not going to like, give away the farm.
Undercut yourself. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, especially if it's on the web, there's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like a cheaper local version. Maybe there's, enterprise versus, I don't want to share it with anybody. I just want to use it internally for myself, subscription or whatever.
Exactly. Well, and that's the whole idea around the accounts, right? Is that like you should be able to, if I own this team, I should be able to add viewers, and I can, solve the cost of the viewership. So like we think about installations where like you have someone that you've onboarded to help you like, keep track of some installation, and like I don't want to ask
he
them
shouldn't
to,
have
like,
to pay for it.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to pay for that. Like we should be able to like buy that seat, and like you can log in to get to it.
I love that. This is great. And I guess it's, like it's going to expand to have plugins for other softwares, and then it's going to be, I mean, pretty powerful. Like a lot of like Pixera, who's an example, and also Unreal, they all have their own like listener sender devices and things, but nothing as robust and informational. And like I'm just thinking about like end display, right? Like the listener and the sender. It's like very dumb. There is in Unreal, they have like the stage monitor that gives you a lot more information about each individual node, and that's like very useful. But all the information back and forth is very specific for what end display is doing. It's not. It doesn't help me if I want to have. It's definitely not expandable to other users. It's definitely not allowing me to like change parameters in a meaningful way on the web. Right. It doesn't give me any. It gives me some information about the computer. Gives me some logs, but it's all of that is very specific for the end display thing, right? And like if I want to know about the actual server, or if I want to know about the machine in general, you're gonna have to KVM into it, or if your system sucks, like change a cable or something. But
that's exactly it, right? Like the other thing like kills me is like I want to have like. I want to fall back to TeamViewer or Parsec or AnyDesk or any of those tools only as my last resort. I don't want to start there because it's like to me it feels so frustrating to navigate any of those things from my phone.
Totally.
Where it's like
it's
right.
Death. It's death.
Because like at the end of the day, like I also want to know that here I think this mobile breakpoint's working, right? Like I want to be able to get in here and like stop the thing without having to like
click.
There's no reason I should have to like TeamViewer into the machine to then after I've TeamViewered into it to like do some
and
silly
9
thing.
times out of 10, the solve is restarting the thing, right? Or like,
Yeah.
or like a even simpler, like, oh, Alt Tab or something so stupid, right? So it's like, why not be able to do that through a nice web GUI without having to like you said, like find your mouse and understand it. And especially if you have
Exactly.
multiple nodes and multiple machines, you're just now exponentially having to team viewer into places. It's very painful.
It's like I have like nightmares of the times where I have been in a BombGar session in a VNC to another server and then VNC to
To
another
be able
server.
to
So I'm like
oh, yeah.
across an ocean, and then I'm
Yeah.
like 3 windows deep into a box on
Yeah.
like
And you move
that's
your mouse and
already
it's
like
like 5 seconds later it moves.
right.
Yeah, and
And all I
maybe
really need to do is change a number.
right. And maybe like thinking about like the ethos of our business in like in a positive, like in a good way, giving these abilities to somebody who doesn't know how to do these things is powerful, right? Maybe somebody is going to do an installation and they're not a systems engineer, and maybe that their only ability is to like, okay, get a listener running, and it's very basic. Now they can have a whole nice set of features that they can offer their clients, which is great.
Exactly. And I think that's like it's the barrier to access is so high, and it's really interesting because like tools like this exist at the hundreds or thousands of machines threshold for server farms where you need to like
Right.
automate infrastructure, and you're going to like run it through like big dashboards for cloud infrastructure. But there's not really a good solution for our market, which is like usually somewhere in the like 1 to less than 100 machines. Like I would love for someone to have 100 machines that they're using Signals on, but there's also just like not a lot of good tools to solve that particular problem without writing a ton of extra infrastructure layer. I think other pieces that we're really excited about from the plugin front is that all the control schema pieces for what controls look like inside of machines, right? Like this is we use TouchDesigner as our testing ground, but this is all a kind of abstract structure so that you could write a plugin for Unreal, you could write a plugin for Unity, you can write a plugin for Node, but we have a plugin for Node already. We'll have a plugin for
Nice.
Python. So it's like we want to make this as this part as painless as possible, because like all the installation work is hard enough. This part shouldn't be that hard on top of all of it.
Right. Yeah, it's like either you just don't do it, you don't have it, or it's hard, like you said, or it costs too much money, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is awesome, dude. Wow. I'm actually really blown away. Because you mentioned what it was, I think in that chat that we had. And I was kind of like, oh, that sounds really great. Like automation stuff, I'm down. But this is like much more feature rich than I expected. So really, this is awesome. Sign me up.
Oh, thank you. That's like, we're
whatever
pretty
it costs,
excited.
I'm in.
It's like, I think this has been it's really interesting. So the Signals V1 really has this idea that a machine is an installation. So there's really like only a one-to-one dynamic there. And expanding this away from a machine is an installation to a machine, or an installation is a collection of machines that lives inside of a team, that lives inside of an org, really feels like, oh, this is like a place for us to like offer some, not only to have some way for how we think about like what we do as a company to like shift and change a little bit, but also to think about like how do we make it easier to do some of the stuff that we want to do all the time. Because I think we've talked with several different clients, and they sometimes have reservations around using tools like TouchDesigner because they're like, well, there's no good way for me to know that it's running, or how do I like do all of the kind of like infrastructure management that you get something from, like you get from a Pixar or Disguise that's got to tie into, like Smart Monkeys has Isaac as their system, right? That's got plugins that do all of that. And we don't necessarily have that. So how do we like make it a little bit easier to do some of those things? I think the other plugin idea that we keep toying with, that I'm like, knock on wood, hopefully mixed it in here, is setting up like a very simple OSC relay. So, you might not have an app that has a good way to like build controls, but you might be able to send OSC messages. So how can we turn those
Stream
OSC
Deck or
messages?
whatever.
Exactly. Because like maybe you want a faster way to do some of that. And I think for sure we can help kind of like solve some of those problems.
Oh, one more thing. I mean, that's for sure. You should definitely do that because that's like, I think, I hate that stuff. I hate a Stream Deck, but so many people love Stream Decks and they're like obsessed with it. And if you can't give them a one button thing, it's like, I don't want it.
I don't want it.
What about viewers? And this is something that like I struggle with completely of like, if I want to build like a touch interface and I want to have a preview of what I'm doing, there's no really way to do that. I have to like do, a VNC situation. Like if I want to have my touch interface on an iPad and I want to see viewers, I have to do VNC. There's no other way to kind of get the signal. There is, but it's not conducive. So
pain.
Yeah.
So the big things that we've thought about there is that right now, all of our traffic is proxied through a WebSocket connection to a database. So, so it's like, that's cool. And that means that like, all this stuff works. I change it here, it changes there. I change it here, it comes back. There's like, we have to rely on a heartbeat and an update cycle to communicate all that stuff back and forth. Right. So like the piece that we've really doubled down on that is, once we've gotten through all of our kind of like other big changes that we've been working on, is also to think about how we fall back to WebSocket. So WebSocket is where we go if we can't build a peer-to-peer connection, but if we can build a peer-to-peer connection, then we want to prefer like a WebRTC, so that you have a stream control both ways that's really fast and snappy. And once we have WebRTC set up there, then it's
you can send
the same thing to think about sending video channels as well.
Gotcha. So that's kind of in the works.
Because that's the other piece, right? It's like, I want some way to send some confidence back to the device.
Yeah.
And just like you said, like I can totally see a world where like I want to build a viewer that helps me understand that like when I change these dials, what does it actually do?
Totally. Yeah, I think it's really smart from the app developer sense to start with something like as simple as WebSocket. It's also cheap. You're not having to host very much data, and then kind of look at something else that's a little bit more robust.
One other thing to turn you on to, and another person that I would absolutely say you should chat with, is that if you haven't chatted with the folks over at Foveate, I would love to connect you with them.
Please.
Do you know what Foveate is?
No.
So where Foveate has gotten really interesting is that we know the folks there, and Foveate is, let me make sure that I've got like a example here set up.
Are you gonna blow my mind
really
again?
Like dialed in to, maybe we'll see. They're super dialed into the digital twin side of the world, and so they've got a pretty like bananas web GUI that gives you a 3D model that you can kind of like zoom through and like all this stuff, which is like this is cool. I love this.
Is that pixel streamed or is that running in 3JS? No way.
3JS. That's really in your browser.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Well, so then if you like really want to like blow your mind, right? The other piece they've set up is they've really treated this like almost like the Google Docs of 3D, so that you can set up waypoints and you can step clients through like all the different places. You can have like an agreed upon shared idea about what the world is.
Powerful.
And one of the pieces that they like turned us on to that is something that we are kind of like thinking about for Signals is like, how do we throw in an extra page here? So whether it's in reports or logs, wherever, like we can give you like a little iframe where you can dump your digital twin, right? Because like at the end of the day, I would love a single place where I can see like, I want the drop down that's like actually where in the venue are the servers, and help me figure out and remember like
Oh, like a systems
where.
overview, like in physical space. I was thinking
Right,
like if
like
I change a parameter, it changes it in the digital twin.
that's, I think, interesting, and we're like chatting with them about what that API looks like. But I also
Hmm.
want to be able to know that like
Right. This
I,
is where
I
the
have a
system
layout of what the
is.
venue is,
Right. This is where the
and
servers
like,
are.
okay, right, where the access panels are,
This is where the
where
connect
all that stuff
is,
lives.
whatever.
Right. Because again, right, like at the end of the day, like you bring on someone to help with a project, and you're like, I can't be there until 2 days from now. But how do I tell you like where the server room is, and which server is the primaries, and which are the backups, and all of the pieces that go along with that? And
Hmm.
having
Hmm.
some easy way to think about like, there is a 3D model of that thing, and I could, say, actually, you'll see right here, this is where the server is. That's what's driving the thing.
Right.
That's
Right.
what you gotta go check out. Is like a
Love that.
super exciting way to be able to think about like the next steps of what this looks like.
Yeah, this Foveate thing is super cool. I never heard about this. Definitely connect me to them. It sounds really great.
Yeah,
Super
they're
super
really
in our world space, in our wheelhouse.
100% in our world space. They're the other pieces that they've thought about are also thinking about like what are the animatics for those. So
Hmm. Hmm.
how do you build those that have controllable elements in them, so that you can not
Hmm.
only think about doing client presentations with these,
Hmm.
but you have an agreed on perspective of what the 3D environment is, because that's
Right.
often really hard to kind of like nail down.
Totally. Totally like the actual look and design and feel of everything.
Yeah,
Super nice. It's crazy how Web 3 is like just completely exploding. What's possible now on
bananas,
the web
right?
is just absolutely insane. I guess like during COVID,
So
you kind of
yeah,
you kind of got like a little bit of it,
it did to
into it,
sneak in.
and then
Yeah,
now it's just
and
like
it's hearing more
products
and more.
coming out left and right. It's awesome. Um, that's super cool, Matthew. Thank you again for showing us kind of like a really really awesome sneak preview of this, and getting us acquainted with Signals. Um, is there any information about release, or if there's a beta program or alpha program, anything like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So SudoSignals.com, you can learn about the product as it exists right now. You can also, on the contact page, you can sign up for messages about when our release is coming. I think we're going to try, and our goal, our hope is that we're going to do an early access program somewhere around December, January, for folks that are interested in kind of like kicking the tires and giving us some feedback. And then hopefully we'll actually roll out into real production before we know it.
Cool. I'm gonna sign up, not now because we're in the middle of this, but I'm gonna sign up for when I finish. Um, awesome. Well, that was great. That was one of the most entertaining sets, and we've had a lot of them on this podcast. Just in terms of like butterflies and excitement. So congrats. That's really great. Okay, so yeah, really really cool stuff. I, you mentioned in kind of your journey into SudoMagic and kind of the trajectory or the difference between being in this kind of big company versus being kind of you're running your own company. Um, this is a question that me, myself, and many other people always have. It's kind of the how do you get work? How do you find clients? Especially when you're coming from a position of, not freelance. And okay, you're maybe very unique because you have this very synonymous name with TouchDesigner and with this kind of processing world, but maybe some people that don't, they've been at a job for 10 years, they have all the experience, all the knowledge, all the know-how, but they don't have the clients. Do you have any
Yeah.
tips or kind of things of how do you find clients? What is a way that you guys have been finding clients, and maybe you can share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like what's really interesting to me to think about still is that like as much as I want to think that this is like a world about like marketing and outreach and Instagram ads and those pieces, like I think in the product side maybe, but I think in the studio side, a lot of this still comes down to relationships. It really comes down to connecting with people that are in the industry doing the kinds of things that you want to do. So I think like anytime you can find ways to, go to that free conference, or find the kind of meetup that's happening where you can chat with other people. We still find that a lot of our biggest connections and kind of openings come from those conversations and connections that turn into, oh, we're trying to solve this problem, can you help us, that turn into, oh my god, actually we have this thing that's like actually 6 times bigger than we think that we can do by ourselves, can you help us with that? So, one of my favorite comments from a theater professor that I had back in my undergrad, a costume designer, was
Mm.
that they used to say, like, the best thing that you can do in our industry is to play nice in the sandbox. And I think that still holds true in a lot of ways. Is like, you know, be honest, be upfront, be true to your
Mm.
word, like as much as you can, play nice in the sandbox. And I think that that finds its way, or helps you find your way to the right people and the right connections.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really potent. Definitely going to conferences and kind of meeting people that are in your field, whether it's meetups or actual conferences, is really powerful. Um, Even if you don't get clients from it, the inspiration and kind of forward thinking that you'll get from it is it is very good. I mean, I had my whole career basically started when I went to NotchCon, even though I hate on Notch a lot and whatever, but coming from Israel and then meeting people and clients that are in other countries, all of a sudden, you're meeting them in a human level. Maybe they know you from the Facebook group, maybe they knew you from your work on some website or something, but the human connection is really what's going to make you be remembered in their eyes. And being nice in the sandbox, totally. Nice. Yeah, unfortunately, there's no like magical thing you can do to find clients. You could be like the best
I wish, if only.
artist, best. And today, like, there is some people that really manage to like catapult themselves through social media and things like that. But I feel like maybe this is not good advice, but I feel like it's not something to rely on, because I feel like it's a machine and you might be sucked in by the machine and it might not result in anything. And I honestly think that there's like many people that get sucked in that machine, and then it turns out that they're not really talented, or they're not really good at the thing, and then it's just like goodbye. Not obviously that's not like a rule, but that can happen.
100%. I think it's really important to have a brand and to build your brand and identity, like that for sure. Like, I think about Simon Alexander and his like amazing repertoire of daily experiments that he's built, and like what an enormous catalog that stands as. And I think about like Elbers and what he's done with the interactive immersive HQ. Like, I think it's really valuable to have an identity there, but it's not. I don't feel like you necessarily find your connections for new work or kind of like new clients that way. Like maybe one or two, but a lot of times it's you worked on that job and there was that other person there that's going to stand up a thing, and
Totally.
you went to lunch with them and they remembered you and they call and they're like, actually, you know what? Like,
Totally.
you were very calm in the very stressful situation. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
Can you help us with this thing?
Totally. Especially nowadays, like to be seen in social media, you need to have millions of followers, and it's like, yeah, I have like 7,000 followers on Instagram, and maybe once a year or once in a really long time I'll get like a request, and even then sometimes they're just like spam, and it's like, and even some people that I know that have 30,000 or 40,000 followers, they're in the same situation where it's like they might be getting 10 requests, but 9 of them are people without budgets and not really interesting. But then again, you do have stories of people that like had their whole career kickstarted because somebody saw them through something viral. So I think it's a little bit of a toss-up. I think that the most important is, like you said, focus on what makes you special, your brand, kind of like, and you know what? If you enjoy doing dailies every day and you enjoy posting to Instagram, go ahead.
Oh yeah,
that's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you hate it, like me, don't focus on it. And,
that's not that's not going to unlock the world for you, right?
Totally. I want to talk a little bit about, you did mention it a bunch, but I feel like it's something that bears like a little bit more of an open conversation about the benefit of teaching others and passing on knowledge. You know, there's the classic. You know, the more you teach, the more you understand, and like, as you teach somebody, you kind of, even on a basic level, you understand things much deeper. But you have been an educator for so long, and I feel like your whole ethos is around education and knowledge expansion. Kind of, what have been your kind of takes from that, and some giveaways from that as well?
Yeah, I know so interesting that you say that, because I think for me, one of the pieces that becomes really important is like, I think about the way that, because you know, I'm still learning. All of us are still learning all the time, right? So like the way that I do tutorials these days is so different than how I did them, you know, when I started. Because now what I try to do is I try to do anything that I'm like following along with. I try to do 3 times. I try to do it once to like follow like, you know, step by step what the person's doing. The second time through, I'll try to speed run it. So like, how much do I remember, and how can I build the muscle memory of like holding on to that idea? And then the third time I do it, I try to think about, all right, where am I going to build variations and changes? How am I going to deviate from what this tutorial is to make this my own, so that I can really hold on to the kind of knowledge and information that's coming with it? Because I think so often, you know, and I think you said this earlier, that we find tutorials and materials on the web these days that are like help you achieve a very specific aesthetic. And like, I can follow along and make that cool, like plexus, you know, sick visual that you made, but I don't walk away from that knowing anything. And I think for me, what's always been really important is not necessarily like, how do I make that really beautiful, like gorgeous thing? Like, yes, I want to do that. And yes, that's really cool. But I also really want to understand the internal mechanics of that and internalize that, because I want to be able to like transform my own ideas and inspiration
Mm,
into something, and not just necessarily copy the thing that seen someone else do.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes total
So for
sense.
me, I'm always like, the question isn't necessarily about like, how do I do it, but like, why did that work the way that it did? Or
Mm,
what's the concept that I'm missing or need to understand? And I think it's super hard and super frustrating right now in the web, right? Because I feel like the world is crushing people, and like, you know, I can't be mad about anyone trying to like make a cool thing because like they're under deadline, and like the budget's low, and it's got to be done in like
mm,
4 hours instead of the 4 days that it should take, and like you just have to get it done.
mm,
um but for me, it's like, I'm always the most curious about understanding the how and why,
mm,
because that changes me internally, and then allows me to like, you know, the kind of internalization of those concepts changes not only the way that I think about the art that I'm creating or the systems that I'm creating, but also lets me expand and, you know, move in ways I wasn't able
mm.
to previously.
Wow, that's great. That's so nice. Yeah, and also I guess it's also gonna create that cycle and that snowball effect of like, you do what you love, so then you become better at it. You're passionate about what you're doing, instead of just like, what's big right now. It's kind of the same thing we were talking about with the Instagram. Like, what's trending right now? I'll make a tutorial about it. You know,
Yeah.
versus like, I'm gonna make a tutorial about something that I know, and now I'm gonna know it even better, and now I'm gonna be even more passionate about it. And then when I impart it, it's gonna be like really powerful.
I can't tell you the number of times I've looked at an operator and I'm like, I know how this works. And then I sit down and try to explain it. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know anything about how this works. There's like one of my favorite threads to go back to is a forum post about the displaced top, and
Okay.
like this like deep rabbit hole I ended up on about like really understanding the mechanics of how the displaced top worked, and being like, this has changed my relationship to understanding this operator, which
Mm.
then has made like left me like questioning like, okay, actually I need to really rethink how many operators work, because like I
Right.
just missed like there's like an adjacent idea that I had that wasn't quite right, and shifting that is like, whoa, actually that changes everything.
Wow. That's amazing. I wish, I mean, I guess I kind of understand why it's not possible, but I wish there was, maybe there is, maybe I'm totally wrong about this, but I wish there was a way to like right click or double click on a node and then see its code, you know, like in Blueprints and Unreal, you can kind of do that. It would be cool. But I
I know.
obviously would also be like a lot of the secret sauce would be given away. I
Well,
don't know.
you know
But I
that
feel
trick
like they
with
wouldn't. Yeah.
you've done the trick with Phong material, right?
Yes. The materials you can put into
Hmm.
GLSL for sure.
You
For
can
sure.
output the shaders.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that for sure. But it would be cool to be able to do that with tops and DATs and stuff like
it,
that. But
it really would.
maybe one day there'll be a
I know.
pro version.
That'll
Um,
unlock all the things.
exactly. That was just funny because Lake Heckerman was on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he built his own like displaced GLSL top. And
Hmm.
when he's like, yeah, so I figured out how the displaced top worked, and I made it my own. I'm like, wait a second, how did you figure out how it worked? And he's like, I thought maybe he had a way of like seeing the actual top code. And he's like, no, I just played with it a whole bunch to see what it does.
To
And he's
really
like, but
understand it, and you're
to really
like,
understand it.
oh, okay. That's
Um,
yeah. I feel like that's so much of my time is like, how do I make it smaller? How do I make the example smaller? How do I make it smaller? How do I like really like get like into the
focus.
tiniest little window? So I'm like, oh, that's how that's working.
Yeah. Um, can you speak a little bit about the? I have it written in a weird way here, but I'll try and phrase it. But the satisfaction of solving problems and building systems. You know, a lot of live performers, there's this concept of flow, obviously, and like, there's nothing better than when you're VJing and there's like the lighting guy and the laser guy, and you're all like so in it, and like time stops, and everything's fucking great. I feel like I have this sense, and I'm very new to systems engineering and like building systems, but I feel like it's not the same type of thing, but there's like a moment where you solve something or something works, you run it and it works, and you're like, oh, there's like that very momentary like feeling. And I do get into the flow sometimes when I'm building systems that's kind of synonymous to that, but there's like that moment of like something feels really good in your it's visceral, it's like somatic, that's just like, this thing works and the way that I want it to work. Have you experienced this? What's been your kind of
Oh
experience with this
yeah.
and flow in general?
I think it's like it's really interesting. So like I spend so much more of my time in like Python, Dart, kind of like language land than I necessarily want to. And it's really interesting because you'll see some authors comment on states of flow in um, text-based programming are spaces that are sometimes cautioned because like the temptation that you fall into is like you're you're chasing an idea that might not necessarily have patterns that are um, dependable enough that you can use them for kind of like big systems. So like
Oh wow,
there's this
I've
weird
never.
kind of like
Wow.
dialogue around like you almost resist the urge to chase that flow feeling when you're writing like
Interesting.
complex code because you don't want to
Wow.
be like I've solved this problem in a way that is like only works in this one condition.
Huh.
Um I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think that it's
Mm.
really to me it's really gratifying to find yourself laying out all the pieces and then
Mm-hmm.
seeing them kind of click together and you're
Mm-hmm.
like okay, that like this part is working the way that it's supposed to, this part is working the way it's supposed to, this part is working the way it's supposed to. It's like connecting the Christmas lights and you're kind of unplugging each one at a time to find the one
Mm-hmm.
that's bad. um because like yeah, it's you know how it goes sometimes. I think like often um what's really like the way that I balance that is I think about like what are the big ideas that get laid out first so that I can have the 50,000 foot like idea for how
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing is supposed to behave. And then, from there, how do we like think about the considerations about how the pieces plug in? And then if we understand like how all of those pieces are going to work, then it's really just about like writing the code to do it. It's like when you're writing a paper, and it's like you've built the outline and you've built the subpoints, and now it's just like, now I just have to connect everything together. And that moment is like really, it's great. You like put on some synthy music, you just vibe, and you just see like, you feel it like build its way through how it's all going to work. And then you run it and it doesn't work at all. And you're like,
Yeah, you're like, "Fuck."
and then you like, poke at it until it starts to like, the wheels start to move. And then all of a sudden, before I know it, you're like, oh, wow, this is like a real thing. This is moving.
It's working, yeah. Speaking about focus, like you do so much. You have such a luscious career in so many, obviously a lot of adjacent things, but lots of different types of things. And, kind of call back to our original discussion or first discussion about, being a nerd and being interested in so many things. How do you stay focused when there's so many possibilities and options, run a company, be a freelancer, do circus, be a theater actor, make a software, make visuals? What are some things that help you stay focused when you have so many options and possibilities?
That's really hard. I think that like that's I feel like something I still struggle with, right? Because when you're in the middle of it, you never appreciate like
Yeah.
the pieces that are behind you or the pieces that are in front of you. You're just like
Right.
in the struggle.
Right.
And so I feel like I often try to just if I can, I'm like the pieces, especially I think this year especially and the year before, I like noticed that my media consumption diet had become much more tailored to short form media. So it was like the Reddit posts, it was TikToks, it was everything that was what could I consume in less than 30 seconds or a minute at most. And I had a moment where I was like, I need to shift my content consumption profile and think about like, where do I consume longer form content to help me break the tendency to want things to be immediate and right now. Because I feel like there is something that I remember about being a kid, like the like luxury of being bored is something that we don't really think about
Totally.
anymore. Like
So
we're
true.
so constantly like pampered with things
Oh
that
my
want
God.
our attention. So
Remember
like
standing
finding
in line
ways
for
to,
things?
oh yeah, right. Like, so I try to find activities in my own life that need time and need like long form attention, because that discipline, right, like changes your relationship to some of the things that feel like they should be immediate. Like it really is okay to sit with a problem and need to understand it and fight with it, and like uncover the concept that's not working for you, because that's part of the moment that like unlocks that new neural pathway, right? It like builds that neural connection that's more meaningful and long lasting than like, I got the answer immediately, I can move on and I will never remember how I did that again.
Are there any platforms or systems that you do or use to get that long form information or open those pathways?
I've been trying to like read more like actual books. So whether that's like
What are those?
audiobooks, right? Like you listen to audiobooks while you like are immersed in activity, or doing those things. I've tried to these days I'm using some combination of Obsidian, Wiki.js, Bookstack, those things to like build my own knowledge stores, because I feel like the act of building the knowledge store and writing it down actually has a big impact on you. We've used Docusaurus as a way to kind of like stand up static sites that are really just about like documentation
Wow.
and like
I've never heard of these
going
tools.
through and like
Obsidian?
Obsidian's super cool for kind of like kind of a combination of like your mind map and your note tool.
Wow. Super
Um,
cool. Wow. I like this.
Docusaurus is a really interesting tool that like builds static websites. So you like write all your content in Markdown essentially, um, but like it builds a
Oh,
website for you out of it.
wow. That's so cool. Really nice.
So we've
You
had
find those tools helpful?
I do. I think it's like there is really something about like building the discipline to do the thing that's slow. That is, it just makes you go slower and like sit with the uncomfortableness of like this isn't immediate, um, and that's really powerful. I think because like we're already in such a like frantic, pressured, you know, dopamine elevated state all the time. Like, how do we find moments in our life that we can kind of act as a foil or a counterbalance to that.
Hmm.
So we're not just constantly primed for like, I need the answer immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, the dopamine thing is so real. I it's like this up and down thing where I catch myself scrolling for so long, wasting my time on my phone, and I'm just like, what am I doing really? And then it's like, oh, it's actually making me feel good. And then it's like, but like
Is it?
I've done drugs before. Like, I know what, like, if I'm gonna have some sort of chemical alteration in my body, the thing that's making me feel good better be like really good.
Better
Otherwise
be
I don't want
good.
to have anything to
Yeah.
do. Yeah. Like I
Right.
don't drink. Kind of stopped smoking, like I don't really do drugs maybe once in a while. So it's like, why am I allowing myself to have the same? And then like the reason I don't do all those things is very, very um, straightforward for me. Is like the risk, the reward versus what I get out of it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I just stopped drinking like 7 or 8 years ago because I got headaches and I couldn't, I wasn't drinking. I was drinking too
Yeah.
much and like I felt shitty the next day. So it's like, okay, being drunk or being tipsy is fun, but it's not worth that thing. Okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. Same for drugs. Same for, weed for me is like a very up and down thing. It kind of comes and goes. But so like the phone is like the same thing. And I'm trying in my head to be like, I'm not getting anything out of this thing, even though it feels good per se. But it's so accessible. And like
I the thing that broke me finally was I put a time limit on my
yeah,
apps,
but then I go over, then I go over the time limit. Does it
and
work?
then
Did
the
it work for you?
lockout code. So you can set it so like you have to enter a code to like
Yeah.
unlock more time, and then I let my partner set the code.
Oh wow, that's so good. Oh my god, I didn't think
Because
about
then it
that.
was
It's
like I couldn't.
dangerous. It's dangerous.
Right, I was like a
But
kid, but it was also like I had this moment where I was like,
that's great.
I'm losing so much time and attention to this, and like I don't want to do that anymore. So
Yeah.
okay, that's like I'll
Wow, I'm
just.
gonna do that. My wife is gonna be so happy. Oh my god, that's it. I never thought of that. Maybe my trust level. I have to think about my trust level with my wife, but we'll see. Oh, that's a great one. Okay, so as we wrap it up here, I grew up in a Orthodox home in Israel as a settler. Don't be mad at me; it's not my fault. I often think about, especially now that I have a child, like I often think about what it means to take the positive of my upbringing and infuse it into him without indoctrinating him or without causing him to, what I'm sure happened to a lot of us that are not in these environments anymore, of like rebelling in a could be positive but often not necessary way. Um, you know, um, so I often think about that, and I love talking to people that also had this kind of a conservative upbringing, that isn't mine, Jewish kind of version. Again, Lake is kind of in my head because it was recent, but he also grew up in a very conservative environment, and it was interesting to hear kind of like the takes and not takes from this place. Um, yeah, whatever you're comfortable sharing. And maybe we could tie it in to like spirituality if that's even something that's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pieces that right because I feel like they're so it's complicated, right? Like all those things are complicated, and I think like I had this moment where I um what I found myself kind of like colliding with was what is it? Zoe always tells me that I'm like lawful good in the like, trifecta of all the things. And so I'm, I just remember having these moments where like I couldn't totally reconcile the intention of the kind of conservative scriptures that I was being taught, and like
Mm-hmm.
the spirit of the dogma with the position and language of the organization. And it just like didn't, I like didn't understand if we were supposed to like love our neighbors and like extend all of this grace and kindness and vulnerability towards others, how we could simultaneously, kind of plant the flag that that's our kind of like MO, that's our, how we operate,
Mm-hmm.
ought to operate, and then simultaneously take the position that like, but like, just because the person that you love is the same sex as you, like that's,
Right.
you're trash, you're
Right.
going to hell.
Right.
Like that doesn't like, I couldn't reconcile uh, uh, a belief structure that was like about
Black and
finding
white.
the best and like goodness in everybody and like
Mm-hmm.
embracing that and like figure out how we could also at the same time like decide who was and wasn't worthy of
Mm-hmm.
that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think like things that I took away, right? Like what are like positive spaces is like, I often think about like the discipline and planning that you put into your life really matter, right? Like it matters that you take the time to, plant your garden and put the time and energy into it, and the efforts that you put into that are things that are reflected back at you.
Mm.
And so I think a lot of times I've leaned more towards the thinking about like the more like parable side
Hmm.
of the Christian experience, and like
Mm-hmm.
what do we take away from these stories uh, about finding the good pieces in one another and the humanity that we share, and how we should rejoice and celebrate in those pieces, and kind of like trust the vulnerability that we build with other people in our
Mm.
lives.
I like that.
um and also, believe that like it's not my place, like as much as it would feel good for me to be the epicenter of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
of like, punching that jerk in the face, like that's, the universe will take care of that person, and
Yeah.
maybe they won't take care of them in this life or the next life, right? But like the 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 ripple that they've caused in the pond is going to come back for them, and
Yeah.
it's not something that I need to hold on to or find a way to like enact any vengeance. And in fact, doing that is probably going to be more destructive for my
For
life
sure. For
than
sure.
positive.
Mm.
So I think for me, like the pieces I've tried to hold on to is like thinking about the like love and compassion and generosity that comes from the, kind of conservative experience that I grew up in, and trying to reflect that energy and hold on to that energy and that kind of kindness,
Mm.
because I think the world is hard enough. So like, the more we can be like generous and kind and compassionate with one another, I think the
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 world
better
will be
world that
better.
we,
Yeah.
yeah. And that doesn't mean that you can take advantage of me. Like I should be able to have a boundary that's like, yo, like you weren't cool, so like I don't want to play anymore. Like, but that's very different than like, me like acting out and being, cruel or mean.
Mm. Yeah, that's really nice. It's interesting. I never really think about it like that. Of like, being kind and nice. And this sounds so pretentious, but like, like it's obvious. Though those things are obvious to me in a way. Maybe not always, but at least in my like adult life, or like from uh, what I can remember. And like for me, like the more things that because like like to me, like yeah, being nice to people is that just makes sense. Like you said,
Yeah.
like even if you're not looking at it in a karmatic way, you're looking at it in a very like momentary way. If you're nice to somebody, they're gonna be nice to you. if you're not nice to them, they're not going to be nice to you. It's like it's almost like a selfish, narcissistic thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I want to get the thing that I need to get, I got to be nice to people because they'll give it to me.
That'd be cool.
Um, the thing that I tie on the most, or try to tie on the most, or I should say, as I'm getting older, trying to tie on the most, is like what creates like a movement inside of me that's more than physical. Like, you can call it spiritual, you can call it ethereal, godlike. I know the word God is very heavy. Really anything that's like kind of outside of the scope of the third dimension. I also sometimes tie it into like nature and evolution and a science that we don't understand, like quantum kind of ideas, multi-dimensions. The more I get older and the more I get more entertained by these kind of things and more engrossed in them, the more I kind of think to myself, well, my lineage is Judaism. My lineage and my ancestry is these people. So they obviously have something to say about these things, right? Because that's like their whole thing. Outside of the dogma and the rules and the regulations, there's also like, how do we connect to the source? How do we do the thing with the, and it's out not only the cultural aspect of it, but like, the prayers, the songs, the, and kind of like, where does it fit into my kind of understanding? Like, I try to infuse like iconography to me that is spiritual, like Merkabahs and different types of patterns and things like that I feel like are uplifting and elevating, if it's color, science, and things like that. I just find like that, like those things are the things that I should try to reintegrate into my life because they were useful to me as a child, right? And like the things that weren't, like the dogma and the rules and the these people are bad, these people are good, out the window, goodbye, I don't need you anymore.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. I think there's like oh my goodness, I know. Excuse me, I have a kitten who's like has a lot of opinions on my lap about everything all the time.
She came in the right time.
At the right time, yeah, right. Like I think so. I have like two tattoos that I think about a lot, right? Like that, like I got when I was, I don't know, in the middle of like a bunch of this, right? So like one of them is this goodie, that is like an amalgam of a bunch of different solar symbols, right? Like we have a cross that's like a an anchor for how we think about meaning making, but that's really anchored in a symbol that is astrologically about like Earth, which is similar to a symbol that we use for understanding like masculine identity, which is adjacent to a symbol that we understand about feminine identity, which is really like another archetypal way that we talk about planetary systems. So like a bunch of those kind of iconograms are really about like the human experience of trying to find meaning and place and understanding. And I think what ultimately I've tried to hold on to is like any of the dogmatic systems that exist are really our struggle to find ourselves, to like understand the universe that is reflected in us, that is like we're simultaneously a part of this like observation and experiencing like cycle. And so there's to me it feels like there's a really deep well to draw from in any cultural iconography about what's the through line and connectivity of how that connects to our individual lineage, but also what's the through line that takes us back to our common symbology that has like a deeper root, that has a deeper root, that has a deeper root, that is like comes from us like struggling to find meaning and community in a world that like let us be bigger than a single organism, but like helped us be united as a thing that was collected together against the crushing chaos and unknown, which is ultimately I hope what do I imagine like a positive kind of like direction of a global consciousness idea is like, how do we find the shared pieces that unite us and kind of uncover for us what it is to be uniquely like in a lived conscious experience, and how do we celebrate and hold on to those pieces, because we don't know what's on the other side of that, and we do have this for this moment, and like maybe the uncomfort of not knowing is actually one of those pieces that we should enjoy more than rail against.
Yeah, like having the answers for everything. Wow, Matthew, I wish we would have got into this sooner. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, please.
You're so fascinating, and I really mean it when I say that I owe so much to you and kind of your catchphrases and the Matthew Ragan of the YouTube. So really, thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time and showing us all this stuff. And anything you want to share or impart on us before we go?
It's just really it's been an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. It's like, it's weird to have been a part of this community for so long at a time when like the Facebook group, didn't exist when I started doing this, and to see how much TouchDesigner as a community has changed and grown, and to see how many people are so excited and impassioned, it's really inspiring to be part of that. I think the piece I would say for all of us is just like remember to be nice to one another, and like find the ways that we can share and build tools that help make for a brighter future, and help us do bigger and better things. Because I think that's part of what's really incredible about this community of artists and creators, and for one of the reasons I want to keep giving back to it.
Wow, what an episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Manismash for the intro and outro music. Thank you to Sophie Holder for the amazing internship helping us with all the episodes. And thank you to the guest for coming on and spending time with us. See you next week.